Chapter 1. Xiao Wan, don't go. I know you still love me. Don't go. Don't go. Behind her, a man's heart-wrenching cry came from the dark basement. When the heavy iron door slowly closed, the man in an elegant black suit looked at the woman next to him with a smile. Su Wan, do you really have the heart to watch him die? Don't you have the heart? Right, he is your brother. Why don't you accompany him to die? Su Wan stroked her nails in boredom. While looking at the man next to her indifferently, she contacted the headquarters of the plane destroyer in her heart. Mission 003 completed, requesting to return. Requesting to return. Headquarters has received. Information transmission. The man next to her didn't know Su Wan's true identity, but he seemed to be used to her poisonous tongue and indifference. Hearing her words, the man was not angry. Instead, he raised his hand and wanted to put it around Su Wan's shoulder. Xiao Wan, okay, let's not talk about that person. Let's talk about the wedding. Before framing his eldest brother, they agreed that once they got control of the Li family, they would announce the marriage to the public. This was what he had been looking forward to. Wedding. Su Wan just smiled mockingly and dodged the man's palm that was about to fall on her shoulder. I'm very tired today. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Seeing her quickly leave, the man's cold eyes flashed with a strong desire. I will definitely get you, I will definitely do it. At this time, second young Master Li didn't know that what awaited him tomorrow was the news of Su Wan's disappearance. Su Wan, who had completed the mission, would successfully leave this world after contacting the headquarters. Plane destroyer headquarters, plane passage room. With a beep sound, the number 3 execution cabin was ejected. A young girl with a pure and gentle appearance slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were particularly clear and beautiful, but at this moment, there was no extra emotion in her eyes. Headquarters number 3, the plane destroyer who was obsessed with replacing the cannon fodder ex-girlfriends to kill the male and female leads. Her name was Su Wan, except for number 1, no one knew which time and space she came from before. After becoming a plane destroyer, Su Wan had been occupying the cannon fodder ex-girlfriend route, and she continued to be corrupted on this road. The further she went, the more she couldn't stop. 03, boss told you to go to her immediately after you came back. Seeing that Su Wan had completed her task and returned, the guard immediately informed her of the boss's orders. The boss here referred to NO in their headquarters. 1. Jiang Yu. Su Wan had a cold personality and she didn't have many friends in the headquarters. The only person she could talk to was Jiang Yu, who had a similar personality to her. She followed the route she knew and arrived at Jiang Yu's office without any obstructions. Just like usual, Jiang Yu was handling official documents with a cold expression. Seeing Su Wan, she merely lifted her eyes and said, "Sit." Su Wan lazily sat in front of Jiang Yu. She didn't have the usual indifference and alienation that she had in front of others. Why did you call me here? She didn't think that Jiang Yu was looking for her for anything good. After all, their department specialized in causing destruction in various planes. As NO. 1, Jiang Yu had made countless enemies over the years, but seeing that she was still living so comfortably, you could tell that she wasn't a good person. Hearing Su Wan's question, Jiang Yu didn't delay. She raised her hand and took out a document from her desk and threw it into Su Wan's hands. There's a big mess in the time-space of the transmigration department. A female antagonist was reborn and almost killed the male and female lead. You came back just in time. Go and save the scene. This isn't under the control of us plane destroyers, right? It's the rebirth department that messed up. They should clean up the mess. Su Wan was a bit unhappy. She only cared about destruction, but she didn't know how to save the scene. And what did the lives of the male and female lead have to do with her? It would be good if those creatures called Pigfeet were all dead. Speaking of this, it had to be mentioned that the plane Su Wan and the others were in was called the Lost Time Space. This place was independent of thousands of planes. There were all kinds of special departments used to contact various planes, including the headquarters of plane destroyers, plane restorers, transmigration, rebirth, as well as the headquarters of female, male, antagonists counterattack, etc. At this time, hearing Su Wan's words, Jiang Yu raised her head and looked at Su Wn deeply. You're right. This matter is a mistake of the headquarters of Rebirth. They have already sent people to deal with it as quickly as possible, but that person failed. Su Wan couldn't help but interrupt Jiang Yu's words. Not only did she fail, but she also messed up time and space. In the future, if we want to send people over, we can only enter the time 2 hours before the male and female leads were killed. Everyone only has 2 hours, there is no way to save them. Speaking of this, Jiang Yu's face also darkened. She really didn't know how Qin Yu recruited people. How did he endure such a subordinate who only knew how to mess things up? Oh, so it's Qin Yu's dereliction of duty. Su Wn gloated a bit. Qin Yu was the boss of the Rebirth department. Su Wan had always thought that Rebirth and whatnot were the most annoying. Seeing Su Wan's expression, Jiang Yu immediately struck while the iron was hot. The headquarters has already put out a reward. No matter which department takes action, as long as they can deal with the Rebirth female lead, they will get 10,000 points. Also, the male and female lead's life and death will not matter in the original plot. How about it? Hearing that the male and female lead's life and death would not matter, Su Wan was really tempted. She didn't want to admit that she was actually tempted by the 10,000 points. Speaking of which, what kind of world was this? Su Wan inattentively flipped through the files in her hands. Chem? The next princess consort? This, she didn't count as an ex-girlfriend, right? This was a proper ex-wife. But for the sake of the unfolding plot and the 10,000 points. Chapter 2. This was a great Xia dynasty that was just a figurehead. This dynasty was prosperous and the people were happy. The surname of the Xia dynasty was Shenyuan. His Majesty was in the prime of his life, and the princes were gradually becoming adults and showing their talents in the court. The hero of this world was the most unpopular fifth prince in the dynasty. The fifth prince was born disabled and had a bad temper. Because his birth mother was only a palace maid, he was not liked by the emperor and the empress dowager. Because of this, when he became an adult at the age of 16, the fifth prince left the imperial city and moved into the Qinwang residence that was given to him by his father. In the second year, when he reached marriageable age, there were not many people who wanted to marry their daughters to the ill-tempered, unfavored, and disabled fifth prince. In the 8th month of the same year, the fifth prince suddenly fell seriously ill. The imperial advisor read his fortune and said that he needed to find a woman who matched the 8 characters of 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 the 8 characters. And the girl with the same 8 characters as Shen Yuanqing was the daughter of the imperial censor. The imperial censor's daughter was named Yi Zhihua. Just like her name, she was a talented and beautiful girl. At the age of 15, there were many sons of officials who came to ask for her hand in marriage. After knowing that his daughter was the one with the same 8 characters as the fifth prince, the imperial censor was very sad. The imperial censor's wife was also very sad. But Yi Zhihua was very smart. Because her 8 characters were only known by her family, the emperor did not know that she was that person. She remembered that there was a Shu sister in her family who was born 2 hours later than her. So she had the idea of substituting the Shu sister. Although the fifth prince was not favored, he was still a wangye bestowed by the emperor. If she took the initiative to send her Shu sister out, not only could she hide her identity, the emperor would also appreciate her family. Moreover, Yi Zhihua thought of her Shu sister's weak and meek appearance. This kind of person had no talent or virtue, she would not be able to marry into a good family in the future. Her older sister was so kind that she sent her to be a Wangfei. This was simply doing a great deed. Thus, the imperial censor's family discussed and decided to follow Yi Zhihua's method. They sent her Shu sister Yi Zhijin to the Qinwang Fu to help Shen Yuanqing. At that time, Yi Zhijin was not favored by the Yi family and her mother was only a concubine. She was powerless to resist the family's arrangement and could only sit in a red palanquin and marry into the Qinwang Fu. What everyone didn't expect was that Yi Zhijin's weak character somehow greatly stimulated the violent Shen Yuanqing. Blood splashed on the spot on the wedding night, and 3 days later, Yi Zhijin opened her eyes again. This time her whole person has changed into a different person. That's right, the original Yi Jin is dead, the current Yi Jin is a soul from a different time and space. She had been transmigrated. At this time, Yi Jin is our female pig trotter. She used her experience in the workplace to easily brush up Shen Yuanqing's favorability, and finally, she and Shen Yuanqing got married. At this time, Shen Yuanqing told Yi Jin that in fact, his leg has long been healed. These years, he has been scheming for the throne, and the serious illness to help the happiness was just a play between him and the imperial tutor. They wanted to pull the Yi family into their group, but they didn't expect that the Yi family would substitute for the peach. Because of this surrogate marriage, Yi Jin was sent to Shen Yuanqing. Later, Shen Yuanqing and Yi Jin worked together and finally succeeded in seizing the throne. However, because the Yi family stood in the third prince's camp, after the third prince failed, the whole family was executed. The ending of the story was that Shen Yuanqing ruled the world, and Yi Jin naturally became the empress, the mother of the world. That's right, the ending of the story should have been like this. But the actual story is that before Yi Jihua died in the dungeon, she was told by Yi Jin that she was a transmigrator, and the real Yi Jin had already died. So don't tell me that blood is thicker than water, your sister was killed by your own hand. With shock and disbelief, as well as deep regret and unwillingness, after Yi Jihua was beheaded, she was reborn with resentment. Speaking of which, Yi Jihua was actually a top-quality talent. She was born and raised in the Great Xia dynasty and was also a talented woman who was surrounded by the stars. The reason why she looked down on Shen Yuanqing was not because of his low status but because Yi Jihua already had a sweetheart. That year, the surrogate marriage, first, she didn't want to give up her love, second, she really thought that her plan was a win-win situation for her family, her parents, herself, and even her Shu sister. Who would have thought that her sister would die tragically under Shen Yuanqing's hands on the wedding night? And that monster that claimed to be a transmigrator, not only did she occupy her sister's body, she also colluded with Shen Yuanqing. Not only did she kill her most beloved man, she also caused the Yi family to be executed. Yi Jihua hated, she was not willing. Thus, she was reborn. Yi Jihua was reborn a month after Yi Jin married into the Qin Wang Fu. At this time, Yi Jin had already died. Yi Jihua knew that her younger sister was taken over by the transmigrator woman. She had lived for a lifetime and was also a famous talented woman. She calmed her heart and sorted out everything she knew about her past life. Yi Jihua then began her counterattack and counterattack. The first thing she wanted to do was to talk to the third prince, Shen Yuanrui. This man was the one she admired in her past life but didn't dare to say it out loud. The Yi family also decided to stand in Shen Yuanrui's camp because of Yi Jihua's persuasion. Speaking of Shen Yuanrui, he was also a character, his IQ was very high, he was also handsome and had a high EQ, so in the royal family, he always had the most support. He was also the most popular candidate for the crown prince position. Yi Jihua believed that with her help, Shen Yuanrui would certainly be able to fight against Shen Yuanqing. Thus, the battle between the two sides officially began after Yi Jihua married into Shen Yuanrui's Qin Wang Fu. As for the final outcome of the two sides, naturally, the reborn Yi Jihua took the initiative and successfully counterattacked. Now that Shen Yuanqing's crafty plot has been discovered, Yi Jin was also crowned with the title of demon. The two people will be executed in an hour. Su Wan thought that if she did not enter the mission at this time, perhaps, this world's perfect ending would not be far away. Hee. What a pity, because, she came. Cough, cough, cough. From the layers of bed curtains came the sound of a young girl's heart-wrenching cough. Hearing that sound, a green-clothed maid hurriedly pulled open the curtains. Junju, you woke up? En. Su Wan's face was pale, somewhat weak. She looked at the maid in front of her. She knew that this maid was called Lu Zhu, she was the original owner's confidant, and also the only person who could accompany her. Lu Zhu, where is cousin? I want to see cousin. Hearing that Su Wan woke up and immediately asked about the man, Lu Zhu's expression was especially distressed. Junju, Wang Ye. Went to the execution ground. Today was the day of Shen Yuanqing's execution. As the victor, Shen Yuanrui would naturally be there. Regarding Lu Zhu's answer, Su Wan was not surprised. But thinking of the original owner's weak White Lotus setting, Su Wn immediately looked at Lu Zhu with pitiful eyes, tears welling up in her eyes. Lu Zhu, cousin, will he not come to see me again? Ever since she was sent to this cold courtyard by Shenyuan Rui, the original owner's body was getting worse day by day. Every day she was in a coma, the time she was awake was very few, and every time she was awake, she would ask this question. Looking at Su Wan's hopeful eyes, Lu Zhu subconsciously turned her face to the other direction. The Wangfu was already preparing for a wedding, their family's princess had already been stripped of her Wangfei position, and that woman named Yi Jihua, would soon become the only Wangfei in the Wangfu from a concubine without a title. These things, Lu Zhu did not dare to tell Su Wn. She knew that her master's body was not good since childhood, and now she was even more weak, and could not take any stimulation. So Lu Zhu could only choose to remain silent, and at the same time, she secretly hated Yi Jihua. What right did that woman have? Wasn't it because of the banquet a year ago, when the Wangye was drunk and stayed with her for the whole night? Was it necessary to make it known to everyone that he had to marry her back to the Wangfu? The Wangye, that year, he clearly promised the Junju that he would be good to the Junju, but ever since that woman entered the family, the Wangye slowly treated the Junju coldly. Yes, the Juanju's body was not good, and could not serve the Wangye, but the Junju did not want to. That fox spirit took advantage of the Juanju's poor body to seduce the Wangye, and even got pregnant with the Wangye's child. The Junju was too angry and sad, and went to find that woman to reason with, and the result was that the two fell into the water, causing the woman to lose her child. The Junju was also very sad, okay? At this time, Lu Zhu had already entered the stage where her imagination could not stop, and Su Wn just quietly sat on the bed, sorting out her own feelings. That's right, the original owner of the body that she transmigrated to was also called Su Wn. This was her own golden finger. All the plane destroyers, after entering the mission, can choose a medium-sized golden finger to carry. Su Wn always carried the same one. She did not like to call other people's names, her useless golden finger could only change her name in the plot, nothing more. But this was enough for Su Wan. Because she was more familiar with the plot and characters of each world than the reborn woman and the transmigrated woman, this was already her biggest golden finger. When she first opened the file and saw this story, Su Wn already felt that it was very strange. That Yi Jihua was really strange. She felt that she had always been in love with Shenyuan Rui. Her love was cautious and humble, so when Shenyuan Rui was drunk, she couldn't help but let him stay for the night. When the matter was discovered, she couldn't help but help him exonerate, causing the matter to become bigger and bigger, and finally the emperor bestowed a marriage. Well, anyway, you have already married into the Wangfu. You also know that the original wife, the short-lived Junju, won't live for many years. You just bear with it. At this time, why don't you bear with it for love? You actually told yourself that anyway, the short-lived Junju was going to die, so you dragged her into the water and contracted a serious illness. This is fate. Not my fault. Later, when the child was gone, you decided that the short-lived Junju was actually the same as Yi Jin, a wolf in sheep's clothing. This kind of strange thing, just thinking about it made one drunk. In fact, the original owner of the Junju was Shenyuan Rui's childhood sweetheart. Before Yi Jihua was reborn, the two were absolutely a loving couple that everyone envied, the model of the royal family. Even after the young Junju died, Shenyuan Rui still loved her. But in this life, Yi Jihua was reborn. She quietly infiltrated into Shenyuan Rui's life. Don't know if it was because the reborn woman's halo was too dazzling. Shenyuan Rui actually had deep exchanges with Yi Jihua on the bed. After eating the marrow of this woman, he yearned for her day and night. Slowly, he began to treat his own Wangfei coldly. Later, because Yi Jihua lost the child, he actually believed Yi Jihua's words, thinking that Su Wan's vicious mind caused the death of his unborn child. As a result, Su Wan was used as cannon fodder. From the beloved Junju Wangfei, she became the cold courtyard's former Wangfei that no one cared about. In fact, the original wife and what-not was not Su Wan's type R. Su Wan had always walked the route of ex-girlfriend, this kind of cold creature, and she actually had obsessive-compulsive disorder R. She did not like to take over any body that had physical contact with the male lead or any other man. However, for this file, Su Wan can make an exception. Definitely not for the 10,000 points. Because the original owner, the young Junju, was weak and sickly, she actually never consummated the marriage with Shen Yuan Rui. Moreover, the Yiji Hua of this world, in Su Wan's eyes, was really asking for a beating. In the previous life, she was arrogant and thought that she was extremely smart, pushing her Shu sister to the fifth prince, that was really making the best use of her. You are so useless, matched with an equally useless prince, it's simply great. What the hell is this mentality? Chapter 3. Lu Zhu fed Su Wan some porridge and side dishes and wanted to serve her to rest. Although Su Wan knew that her body needed more rest, but she suddenly remembered that Shenyuan Rui and Yi Jihua were at the execution ground, waiting for an hour to send Shenyuan Qing and Yi Jijin on their way. Thinking about it, at this time, Yi Jihua's mood must be very good. Humph, if she could do something to make her feel less refreshed, Su Wan felt that she would truly feel refreshed. So she immediately asked Lu Zhu to prepare a brush, ink, paper and inkstone. Imitating the original owner's handwriting, she quickly wrote a letter home. Junju, you are. Seeing her own master writing a letter home, Lu Zhu was indeed stunned. Because ever since Su Wan married into the Yu Wangfu, she broke away from the original general's Fu. There was no other way, who told her birth mother Princess Rui to leave early, leaving behind a weak and sickly little Junju for the great general? And great General Su always wanted a son who could fight on the battlefield. So, when Su Wan was not even half a year old, His Majesty insanely bestowed a marriage to great General Su Yufeng. This time, the bride was also a member of the royal family, specially titled as a princess to be bestowed to the great general. This Princess Qing Yu did not disappoint. After 9 months, she unexpectedly got a boy and gave birth to Su Yufeng's eldest son, Su Rui. Su Rui was younger than Su Wan by a year, but because his body was healthy from a young age, he started practicing martial arts at the age of 3. By the time he was 7 or 8 years old, he was already much taller than Su Wan. When they were young, the relationship between the siblings was very good. Even Su Rui knew to protect his sister. This made General Su very gratified. But as time passed, the relationship between the siblings underwent earth-shaking changes. The story of the General Su Fu was skipped in the original world. This was like a bug in the system. Why did Su Wan, who was clearly born noble, end up lonely and depressed? Her father was the great general of the dynasty, and although her mother passed away, she was the most favored princess. So the question was, what matters did the Su family have that others did not know? Su Wan lost her Wangfei position and was even banished to the cold courtyard. Why did the Su family not care? The inside story, Su Wan naturally knew better than anyone else. Therefore, after receiving the memories of the Su family from the original owner, Su Wan felt that her entire being was refreshed and refresh. Su Wan wasn't the original owner. She was even a person who would do anything to achieve her goals. Therefore, the General Su residence that was a dragon's pool and tiger's den to the original owner was practically a golden finger to the current Su Wan, okay? Lu Zhu, let the dark shaman immediately pass this letter to Su Rui. There's no time for delay. Lu Zhu, who was at the side, saw the determination in Su Wan's eyes. Her entire face paled, even her lips trembled. Master, once you do this, then there is no turning back. Heh. Su Wan just smiled in despair. Since cousin brother doesn't give me a path to walk on, then let me never look back in this life. Hearing Su Wan's words, Lu Zhu's face turned white. The princess, does she not want to live anymore? It seemed like Wang Ye really broke the princess's heart. If it wasn't for this, why would the princess write a letter to Su Rui, that hungry wolf? Tightly holding the letter in her hands, Lu Zhu's hands kept trembling. She knew that she was holding the princess's life. Princess, please reconsider. I'm telling you to go. Quickly go. Cough cough, cough cough cough. Su Wan violently coughed, even the corner of her mouth was dark red, but at this moment, her eyes were shining brightly. Seeing her determination, Lu Zhu finally made up her mind and quickly rushed out of the room. The cold courtyard that they were currently living in was very remote and spacious, but Lu Zhu cleaned it up. Shenyuan Rui also didn't have any intention of putting them under house arrest. It can be said that Lu Zhu could freely enter and exit the Yu Wangfu, but this time she didn't leave the courtyard. She just stood at the corner of the wall and softly called out to the air, "Dark shaman." A black figure mysteriously appeared. This figure was covered by a black cloak and hat. It couldn't be seen, only a tall silhouette could be seen. Seeing the familiar and frightening figure, Lu Zhu first subconsciously took a step back, then as if she thought of something, Lu Zhu took a deep breath, stood up straight, and raised the letter in her hands. "Princess's handwriting, quickly hand it over to your master. If you make a mistake, you'll have to bear the consequence." Since she wasn't afraid of death, why should she be afraid of them? At this moment, Lu Zhu felt that she was awesome. After receiving the letter, the dark shaman didn't stop and immediately disappeared from the courtyard. Since the princess married into the Yu Wangfu at the age of 15, the dark shaman followed her. Unknowingly, it had already been 4 years. Perhaps it was because he was too familiar with the princess's character. The dark shaman thought that he was absolutely abandoned by the young master, otherwise why would he be sent to carry out this kind of impossible task? But today, on this very day, the mission that seemed impossible to be completed was inexplicably completed. At this moment, the dark shaman also felt that he was awesome. Well, in fact, Yi Jihua, who was far away at the execution ground, at this moment, seeing that it was almost time, she also felt awesome. But no one would feel more comfortable than Su Wan. After writing the letter to Su Rui, Su Wan smiled and lay back on the bed. This time, with the addition of Su Rui, that hungry wolf, the stage for the future drama was truly set. Now all that was left was to wait for the curtain to open and all sides to appear. When Lu Zhu returned to the room, she saw that Su Wan had fainted again. This time it wasn't an act, but because her body was really too weak. When Su Wan woke up again, Lu Zhu wasn't waiting in the room. Instead, she saw a man with gentle eyebrows wearing a moon-white robe, sitting at her bedside in a daze. Seeing that she suddenly woke up, the man was startled for a moment. His face flashed a touch of awkwardness. He embarrassedly said, "Princess, you're awake?" Su Wan responded and immediately activated the special effect of the white lotus flower. She widened her misty eyes and looked at the man by the bedside. "Imperial Physician Sai, did His Highness ask you to come see me? Is he back? I want to see him." According to the plot after Yi Jihua's rebirth, at this time, Princess Su Wan was already like a dried-up oil lamp. She couldn't wait for Xian Yuan Rui to change his mind, so she could only die in depression. Su Wan also knew that her body wasn't good, so she wanted to leave a good impression in front of this man. This man was called Physician Sai. He came from a family of divine doctors. His medical skills were very high. Originally, Xian Yuan Rui invited him to treat Yi Jihua's body, but Yi Jihua, in order to show her tolerance and kindness in front of Xian Yuan Rui, specially asked Physician Sai to treat Su Wan's illness. This action won the good impression of the two men. After Physician Sai diagnosed Su Wan's illness, he also told Yi Jihua that Su Wan wouldn't live for long. But at this time, Yi Jihua seemed to be possessed by the Holy Mother, clamoring to see Su Wan, bringing medicine and gifts. The originally depressed Xiao Junju saw that her love rival came to flaunt her prowess. She, who was born with a noble background, felt that she had been insulted and became even more ill. And as an outsider, Physician Sai was moved by this kind Yi Jihua. "Your mother, are all men really stupid?" Su Wan really didn't want to ridicule them, because Yi Jihua actually cried and wept when the original owner was seriously ill, saying that Jejie was in too much pain, that the Xiao Junju was too pitiful. If she could just sleep and not wake up, then she wouldn't be in so much pain and whatnot. So Physician Sai, who secretly admired Yi Jihua, really euthanized the original owner. Your sister's euthanization. So don't look at how Su Wan looked at Physician Sai's pitiful eyes. In reality, she was thinking about how to cut this guy into 8 pieces. Physician Sai naturally didn't know Su Wan's thoughts. He only felt that the Xiao Junju in front of him was really pitiful. He couldn't help but soften his voice. "Junju, Wang Ye is very busy these days. If he has time, he will come to see you." "Will he?" Su Wan smiled in despair. 2 lines of sparkling and translucent tears slowly flowed down her pure and beautiful face. "Cousin, he is accompanying Yi Jihua." "Yes, I shouldn't bother him. I can't always accompany him. I can't give birth to his children, even I. Speaking up to here, Su Wan's small hands tightly grasped the brocade quilt on her body, her chest violently heaving up and down. I can't even fulfill the duties of a wife. What? Hearing up to here, Physician Sai was really startled. He subconsciously raised his eyes and saw Su Wan's tear-stained appearance. The original owner was born noble, her appearance was also exquisite and beautiful, otherwise, she wouldn't have been so loved by Shen Yuanrui. At this time, Su Wan was only wearing a white inner garment. Not only was the front of her clothes somewhat messy, her beautiful hair was lazy and fluffy, scattered on her shoulders. Perhaps it was because she had just cried, her eyes were red and her chest was constantly moving up and down. Physician Sai finally noticed that although this sickly and weak woman, in fact, her figure was very good. "Hey, don't look indecently." Physician Sai immediately blushed and lowered his head, secretly blaming himself for being so rude to the little Junju. But to tell the truth, Physician Sai didn't think that the little Junju and the Wangye had been husband and wife for 4 years, but they still hadn't done it. This was simply a shocking inside story, right? In fact, this was indeed Su Wan and Shen Yuanrui's secret. When they were young and just married, Shen Yuanrui loved Su Wan miserably, fearing that she would suffer a little bit of harm. Knowing that her body wasn't good, he tried his best not to touch her. There were several times when he couldn't control himself, seeing that the gun was about to go off the rails, but seeing Su Wan's trembling and scared appearance, he gave up. At that time, Shen Yuanrui thought that as long as Su Wan's body was well, the two of them still had a lifetime. The road ahead was still very long. Only afterwards, Shen Yuanrui met Yi Jihua. After Yi Jihua married into the Wangfu, Shen Yuanrui really tasted the joy of intimacy. Yi Jihua was not only talented, she was also one of the top beauties. Whether it was physiologically or psychologically, Shen Yuanrui felt satisfied. He gradually grew up and matured, he had his own ambition, his own path. He, Shen Yuanrui, was no longer that affectionate youngster from before, so he gradually stopped loving his childhood sweetheart, the little Junju. Therefore, he was even less interested in Su Wan's thin and weak body that would hurt with just a touch. In fact, at this time, Su Wan even had a bad taste in her mind. If this story was changed to a sadistic love story, it would actually be dark purple. Shen Yuanrui liked the little Junju, but he couldn't bear to touch his white moonlight. So every time, he could only find a substitute to vent his feelings, and that substitute was Yi Jihua. Yi Jihua originally loved Shen Yuanrui, but after being abused by him again and again, she gave up. After she was reborn, Yi Jihua wanted to leave Shen Yuanrui, but at this time, Shen Yuanrui became an overbearing CEO and forced her to love him. So the two people loved and killed each other. In the end, they actually thinking about that scene, Su Wan also felt that it was quite interesting. The candlelight in the room flickered, Su Wan no longer spoke. When Physician Sai raised his head again, he saw Su Wan looking at the candlelight in a daze, the corner of her lips carrying a bitter and self-deprecating smile. This kind of painful expression, this kind of woman in despair, he didn't know why, but in an instant, it struck Physician Sai's little heart that longed to save the common people. He felt that he must save her. So young man, imagination is a kind of disease, did you create it? Su Wan, she was obviously only thinking too much and couldn't come back to her senses, that's all. Chapter 4. When Shen Yuanrui and Yi Jihua returned to the Wangfu, it was already late at night. At noon, she personally supervised the execution of Shen Yuanqing and Yi Jijin. Yi Jihua finally got rid of one of her worries. It can be said that after her rebirth, she had never been so happy. Yi Jijin finally died, Shen Yuanqing was also beheaded. They will never have the opportunity to hurt Shen Yuanrui. Jihua, what are you thinking about? Entering the door, Shen Yuanrui clearly felt the change in Yi Jihua's aura. That kind of relieved expression, her whole person seemed to become light. No, nothing. Yi Jihua heard Shen Yuanrui's voice, her face turned red. Reborn in this life, she was still very grateful to the heavens. In the previous life, she did not have the courage to be together with Shen Yuanrui. She could only secretly watch him and Su Wan's love watching him be infatuated with Su Wan. At that time, her heart was also very painful. Fortunately, Su Wan will not live for long. Thinking of the previous life, the short-lived woman who always occupied Shenyuan Rui, Yi Jihua told herself that she did not need to care about a dying person, but Wang Ye, the princess, she. Why are you mentioning her? Hearing Yi Jihua take the initiative to mention Su Wan, Shenyuan Rui's originally gentle expression became a bit cold. Although he and Su Wan grew up as childhood sweethearts, but Shenyuan Rui thought that he had deep feelings for Su Wan, but what he got in return was that woman's unreasonable provocation. She even cruelly killed his and Jihua's child. Thinking that the woman he loved for so many years was actually a poisonous woman with a weak appearance but a vicious heart, Shenyuan Rui felt that he had been deceived, and the anger in his heart skyrocketed. Seeing that Shenyuan Rui was very disgusted with Su Wan, Yi Jihua finally felt relieved. She comforted herself in her heart, Su Wan will eventually die, let Wang Ye give up on her now, it will be good for everyone. Presumably, in the previous life, after Su Wan died, even in the underworld, she would not be able to see Wang Ye heartbroken for her, right? She also hoped that Wang Ye could find his true love and spend the rest of his life with her, right? Thinking like this, Yi Jihua felt that the meaning of her rebirth was to save Shenyuan Rui, not only to save his fate, but more importantly, she saved his love. That night, some people were affectionate, some people were in so much pain that they wanted to die, and some people had no dreams. When Su Wan woke up, the sun had risen high and the room was filled with a faint herbal smell. Su Wan struggled to prop up her body. Through the curtains, she saw Physician Sai's busy figure. Imperial Physician Sai? Su Wan gently lifted the bed curtain and stared at the man not far away. Her eyes were still somewhat sleepy, but at this moment, she looked exceptionally lovable. Physician Sai froze for a moment and quickly lowered his eyes. Junju, you woke up. The decoction will be ready soon. I'll feed it to you later. Noticing Physician Sai's unnatural expression, Su Wan only secretly smiled. To say that Physician Sai was a fool, it would be better to say that he was too pure. However, a man who was too easily bewitched, in essence, was he stupid? Or dregs? Su Wan simply no longer thought about such a childish question. Looking at Physician Sai's appearance, it seemed that he sincerely wanted to help her. Then, her little life would be able to live for another 3 to 5 years. There should be enough time to kill Yi Jihua and Shenyuan Rui. Not long after, Physician Sai finished brewing the decoction and carefully placed it in front of Su Wan. It must be said that men and women should not touch each other. Even if it was an imperial physician, he didn't need to personally feed the decoction. But Physician Sai was so assured and bold that he did it. Su Wan naturally would not refuse. This was originally the treatment that belonged to Yi Jihua. Now, she felt at ease and enjoyed it. Once the decoction entered her mouth, it brought with it an indescribable bitterness. In fact, Su Wan didn't feel this bitterness at all, but she still wrinkled her willow leaf curved eyebrows, her pair of eyes were misty and she looked at Physician Sai with a pitiful face. So bitter, I don't want to drink anymore. It was said that a spoiled woman would make people love her. Originally, Su Wan had such a good figure and appearance, but she was a reserved and proud Junju. She basically wouldn't act spoiled in front of Shenyuan Rui. Seeing other men, she wouldn't even say a word. Truly a waste of resources. Is it bitter? Seeing Su Wan looking at him pitifully and coquettishly, Physician Sai only felt his heartbeat speed up. He immediately turned his head away without a trace and then picked up a golden date from the small bowl at the side. Junju, you eat. Saying this, he blankly placed the date next to Su Wan's mouth. Su Wan squinted her eyes and opened her red lips. Her warm lips brushed past Physician Sai's fingertips. Physician Sai immediately retracted his hand as if he was electrocuted. What did he just do? Such a stupid man. Absolutely not him, Imperial Physician Sai. Absolutely not. For a moment, the atmosphere between the two of them became a little warm and ambiguous. Su Wan felt that she had grasped the right scale and she once again opened her mouth. Imperial Physician Sai, I don't have to suffer anymore. Thank you, you. You are really good to me. Physician Sai opened his mouth wanting to say something, but he heard Su Wn continue to speak to herself. In the past, cousin would always personally feed me the decoction. At that time, I felt that I was the happiest person in the world, unfortunately. Junju. Physician Sai didn't know what to say. His heart floated and sank. He always felt that his mood today was a bit strange. Actually, this is also good. Su Wan reluctantly smiled at Physician Sai. Cousin found someone he loves again. I should be happy. Who let my fate be bad? I can't give birth to children for him, and I can't always accompany him. Now that cousin doesn't like me, I should be happy. This way, when I leave, he won't be hurt. You won't die. Physician Sai somewhat agitatedly interrupted Su Wan's words. Su Wn raised her head and blankly looked at Physician Sai. Physician Sai, who was somewhat guilty under her gaze, still gathered his courage and looked directly at Su Wan's eyes. I will cure you. Junju, you must have confidence in this official's medical skills. The two people looked at each other for a long time. Su Wan finally smiled and nodded. She said, Physician Sai, I believe you. This was perhaps the best voice Physician Sai had ever heard in his life. Until many years later, every time he woke up from a drunken dream, he would still see that woman's bright eyes, smiling at him and saying, Physician Sai, I believe you. Chapter 5. Yu Wangfu once again held a joyous occasion. The courtyard was filled with bright red, as if afraid that others wouldn't know how joyous they were here. High walls and large courtyard, one could only hear the smiles of the new, not the tears of the old. The common people were completely unaware of the change of Yu Wangfu's Wangfei. You said Yu Wangfei? Who? Such a high and mighty person, how can we common people recognize her? That's right. The 10 Li Long Street in the capital was still very lively. Only those high officials and nobles, the emperor's relatives and descendants knew that the always favored Yu Wangfu disregarded the seriously ill Xiao Junju and made Yi Daren's Di daughter his Wangfei. If it had been any other day, this matter would definitely have angered His Majesty. However, it was different now. The Yi family had just exposed the fifth prince's plot and had made a great contribution by placing righteousness before family. At this time, there was news that the young princess was seriously ill and would not live for long. Although Su Wan's Xiao Junju was also a noble, well-informed people in the court knew that Su Wan was not favored in the general Fu. Ever since she married into Yu Wangfu, she cut off all relations with the Su family. So for this kind of sick Xiao Junju who was not loved by her father and uncle, her happiness, anger, sorrow and joy, even her life and death, who would care? The great Xia dynasty had a clear distinction between men and women. Even if she was a noble, in this dynasty, she was only a chess piece used for marriage alliances. And Su Wan, a useless chess piece that didn't have long to live, had long been abandoned by everyone. The cold garden was also a part of the Wangfu. This place didn't have any red decorations, appearing out of place with the entire Wangfu. The sun set, the joyous sounds in the front courtyard still rose and fell. Su Wan stood in the courtyard wearing an unlined garment, gazing into the distance, looking at the direction of the main residence in her memory. Master, the weather is cold, be careful of your body. Lu Zhu carefully draped a snow-white cloak over Su Wan's shoulders. No matter how cold the weather is, can it be colder than my heart? Su Wan gently bit her lips. These few days under Physician Sai's care, her body had already improved a lot, but this body was really too weak. Right now, although she was just standing there and acting out a pitiful scene, she still felt dizzy and her limbs were weak. Junju. A slender figure flashed through the moon gate. Tonight, Physician Sai was wearing a dark blue brocade robe. This was specially made by his family's tailor for this wedding banquet. The clothes were brand new, and the style was especially beautiful, but Physician Sai felt awkward wearing these clothes. Especially during the banquet, he heard his colleagues say, "Women are like clothes, if the old doesn't go, the new won't come." Physician Sai could no longer restrain his irritation. They had compared the young commandery princess to old clothes, but they didn't know anything at all. Physician Sai also knew Yi Zhihua. Because he had seen Yi Zhihua's illness before, he once thought that she was a very kind and gentle woman. But tonight, seeing her and Prince Yu happily holding the consort ceremony, and thinking that her happiness was built on the foundation of the little Juanju's pain and despair, Physician Sai's favorable impression of that woman dropped infinitely. Imperial Physician Sai. Seeing Physician Sai's figure, Su Wan's eyes brightened but immediately became quiet. Sai Daran, you came at the right time. Lu Zhu didn't seem to feel the awkward atmosphere between the two people. She quickly walked to Physician Sai's side. Her face was full of pleading as she looked at him and said, "You quickly persuade the princess, her jade body is more important. She won't be able to stand being exposed to the wind." Junju. Physician Sai's heart ached and he couldn't help but quicken his steps. "Let's go back to the room. Today, I brought you your favorite soft jade cake." As he spoke, Physician Sai gently took out a small exquisite package from his bosom. It was produced by the capital's imperial dining room. "I'm not hungry." Su Wan's eyes flashed. She looked at the lights in the distance and then looked at Physician Sai in front of her. Her gaze gradually became firm. "Physician Sai, you, take me." Physician Sai's eyes suddenly brightened. What did the little Junju say? She called him. Take her away? This thought suddenly rushed into Physician Sai's mind, but he could no longer suppress it. This was her sad place. She wanted to leave this place, there was nothing wrong with it. And now, she was no longer Yu Wangfei, so why can't he take her away? Thinking like this, Physician Sai's body couldn't help but tremble. But, Su Wan's voice stopped there. The word go didn't leave his mouth. Because in the dark of the night, a tall and cold figure suddenly appeared. Gloomy eyebrows, bloodthirsty eyes. A man with a monstrous aura stood under the moon door as if there was no one else. He revealed a strange and evil smile at Su Wn. Xiao Wn, be good. I've come to take you home. The moment she heard that voice, Lu Zhu looked as if she saw a ghost. Her face turned deathly pale and she subconsciously hid behind Su Wan. General Su. Physician Sai froze for a moment. The moment he turned his head, he saw Su Rui, who was still wearing a soft armor and emitting a murderous aura. Everyone says that a tiger father will not have a dog son. Su family was a family of generals. Although this generation only had Su Rui, he was more powerful and bloodthirsty than his own father. At a young age, he already awed the Four Wilderness and became the youngest general in the history of Da Xia. Su Wan's hands tightly clenched and finally loosened. She was afraid. Physician Sai was very close to Su Wan. He was the first to discover her and Lu Zhu's abnormality. Outsiders all said that Su Wan was abandoned by Su family. Then the real reason for abandoning her, what was it? No one knew the secret behind it. Xiao Junju. Physician Sai subconsciously raised his hand, wanting to grab Su Wan's hand regardless of everything. But Su Wan dodged. She smiled at Physician Sai in despair. Her whole body trembled as she looked at Su Rui. Younger brother, did you really come to pick me up? You really came at the right time, ah. Did you pinch me to come? Su Wan scolded Su Rui in her heart 108 times. Her face was still weak, her heart was like dead ashes. Her heart was like still water and she already had no love in life. Remember what I said when you got married? Su Rui walked step by step. His steps were steady and full of oppression as he walked in front of Su Wan. Ignoring Physician Sai who was at the side, Su Rui's tall body overbearingly blocked Su Wan's line of sight. A pair of strong arms moved slightly and encircled her in his embrace. This embrace was ice cold, with a dense smell of blood that couldn't be dispersed. When Xian Yuan Rui doesn't want you, it's time for me to pick you up and bring you home. Su Rui leaned against Su Wan's ear, his lips almost touching her earlobe. His thick and warm breath filled with malice blew into Su Wan's ear. Your mother. Goosebumps rose all over her body. Su Wan closed her eyes as if accepting her fate, letting Su Rui hold her in his embrace. The man's breath seemed to carry an ice-cold aura, but the action of holding Su Wan unconsciously became gentle. Lu Zhu, still not coming over and following me. A low shout sounded. Lu Zhu, who was scared out of her wits by Su Rui, immediately came back to her senses and followed behind him in a panic. General Su, Xiao Junju Shi. Physician Sai couldn't help but open his mouth again, But his voice was ruthlessly interrupted by Su Rui. Imperial Physician Sai, you don't need to worry about my sister's matters. She has me, that's enough. You sister control maniac. Su Wn simply closed her eyes and leaned into Su Rui's embrace. She already had no strength to ridicule him. Originally, she wanted to increase Physician Sai's favorability before leaving, but now it seems like there's no chance. Physician Sai, Physician Sai, you can give sister some face. In the future, if I want to sow discord between the male and female lead, sister still needs your fighting strength. From the cold garden to the main residence, the distance wasn't too far. Along the way, there were bright red palace lanterns everywhere. Su Wn buried her face in Su Rui's chest. Although he was wearing a thick soft armor, Su Rui could clearly feel Su Wan's movements. She was crying. For a heartless and unjust person, is it worth it? Su Rui's tone was unspeakably ridiculing. Su Wan, whose eyes were red, suddenly firmly grabbed Su Rui's arm. Bring me over. Still not giving up. Su Rui's thick eyebrows raised, his tone already vaguely carrying a bit of worry. No, it's to let myself completely give up. Su Wan's voice was very low, but Su Rui could hear it clearly. His eyes flashed with a cold light, somewhat bloodthirsty hooked up his lips. With a sidestep, his whole body suddenly soared into the air, stepping on a high wall. Su Rui hugged Su Wn and soared into the air. At this time, the consort ceremony had already ended. Shenyuan Rui was in a good mood, bringing Yi Jihua, who was wearing a bright red palace dress and chatting wittily with the ministers. At this time, the guards at the door suddenly cried out in alarm. Immediately, everyone felt a burst of cold wind. A tall figure soared into the sky. Come. Protect the prince. A group of guards nervously filed in. When they saw who the person who suddenly broke in was, all the guards were stunned. No, it should be said that everyone in the hall was stunned. No one thought that Su Rui would come, moreover in this kind of way. Annihilated Zero replies, Annihilated Zero collections, little friends are also awesome. Chapter 6. Su Rui's sudden appearance surprised everyone. When they saw that Su Rui was actually holding a person in his arms, the expressions on the faces of all the guests could only be described as strange. Cough cough. Su Wn weakly coughed a few times, struggling to let Su Rui let go of her. At this time, Shenyuan Rui naturally also saw Su Wan. Since she was sent to the cold garden, Shenyuan Rui never went to see her again. Extreme self-confidence, behind it was extreme conceit. Shenyuan Rui did not allow anyone to deceive him, so he was really ruthless towards Su Wan. This was the true face of this man. He was born in the royal family, how could he really have any sincerity? Your Highness Yu Wangye, congratulations. Su Wan slowly walked in front of Shenyuan Rui step by step. At this moment, her gaze was calm, like the surface of a lake without any ripples. Shenyuan Rui had never seen such a calm and indifferent Su Wan. For a moment, he was somewhat stunned. In the face of such an awkward situation, Yi Jihua, who was dressed in red, was somewhat flustered. She subconsciously grabbed Shenyuan Rui's sleeves and then raised her eyes to look at Su Wan. Her voice was filled with deep worry. Sister, your body, is it okay? I am not your Jejie. Su Wan looked at Yi Jihua with a gaze as sharp as a knife. This indifferent tone and sharp gaze made Yi Jihua subconsciously want to hide behind Shenyuan Rui. Shenyuan Rui immediately frowned in displeasure and calmly looked at Su Wan. Su Wan, pay attention to your identity, this is not a place for you to cause trouble. He thought that she had already thought it through in the cold garden, didn't expect. A ridiculing sneer suddenly sounded. Su Rui raised his face, his gaze ruthlessly staring at Shenyuan Rui. Wangye, please also pay attention to your identity. My Jejie is a dignified princess. Tonight she specially came to congratulate you. Is this how you treat a guest? Su Rui purposely emphasized the word guest, making everyone confused. Also, at this time, Su Rui's cold-blooded eyes suddenly fell on Yi Jihua's body. My Jejie only has me, this one younger brother. Not everyone is worthy of calling her Jejie. You Wangfei, don't randomly claim relatives. Yi Jihua didn't dare to look at Su Rui face to face. In her past life, Yi Jihua didn't live longer than Su Wan, so she wasn't too clear about the final outcome of Su family and Su Rui's matters. But whether it was the past life or this life, Su Rui's reputation as an evil star was very resounding. This man was like a madman, no one was willing to offend him. Sigh. A sorrowful sigh seemed to cover up the discordant atmosphere in the hall. Su Wan sighed, then looked deeply at Shen Yuan Rui. I sincerely congratulate Prince for finding your beloved person. This Yu Wangfu no longer has a place for me, Su Wan. Tonight, I came to bid farewell to Prince. Farewell? Shen Yuan Rui looked at Su Wan in astonishment. Even though he already had no feelings for her, but Shen Yuan Rui seemed to have never thought that Su Wan would leave him. So at this moment, he suddenly heard that Su Wan wanted to leave, moreover in front of so many guests. This made Shen Yuan Rui feel that he had lost face. Under the attack of anger, he immediately roared, "Nonsense! You are this prince's official wife, where do you want to go? Princess! Isn't that right by your side?" Not far away, Su Rui couldn't help but add another knife. At this moment, Su Wan's acting also broke out. Her face was filled with reluctance and determination as she looked at Shen Yuan Rui and Yi Jihua. Her voice was dyed with a desperate sobbing tone. "The divorce document will be sent tomorrow. Cousin, I will not be a stumbling block between you two. Without me, cousin, you will be happy, right? You and I. In the end, fate is shallow, it is Xiao Wan who does not have the fortune." Before she finished speaking, Su Wan's face turned pale, causing people to be caught unprepared and fainted. Shen Yuan Rui, who was closest to her, subconsciously wanted to stretch out his hand, but there was a figure faster than him. Su Rui once again pulled Su Wan into his embrace. Standing tall, he raised his eyebrows and provocatively looked at Shen Yuan Rui. He used a voice that only the two of them could hear and said in a low voice, "Prince, in the future, do not disturb elder sister, otherwise, I will not let you off." Perhaps at that moment, Su Rui's eyes were too fierce, or perhaps his words made Shen Yuan Rui think of something. In an instant, Shen Yuan Rui's face changed, becoming especially unsightly. No one in the prince's mansion dared to stop Su Rui, the evil star. The guards of the prince's mansion could only helplessly watch Su Rui and Lu Zhu leave. Sitting in the General Fu's carriage, Lu Zhu shrank in the corner, not daring to breathe, trying to reduce her presence as much as possible. And Su Rui's face was gloomy, holding the unconscious Su Wan. His calloused hands combed Su Wan's long hair inch by inch. "Why, are you not obedient?" His deep voice carried a trace of malevolence. Coming. The legendary deep well ice patient. Su Wan, who was conscientiously pretending to be unconscious, had already felt Su Rui's movements, but she did not move, continuing to pretend to be unconscious to the end. "Didn't I tell you, the men outside cannot be trusted, Shen Yuan Rui is also the same." Su Rui's voice suddenly became gentle, his fingers gently twirled around Su Wan's long hair. "Sister, it's enough to have me to protect you. Those people who covet you, all deserve to die. Child, you must not have taken your medicine before going out tonight, right?" Towards Su Rui, Su Wan could only express sympathy. This was also not an easy child. As the only male in the Su family, Su Rui received the most rigorous training since childhood. Not only did he not experience the warmth of his parents, he also had to face the most rigorous training every day. After a long time, this child's heart did not want to be dark, it was hard. And the original Su Wan and Su Rui were exactly the opposite, because she lost her mother and was congenitally deficient. When Su Wan was young, she was the treasure of the General Su Fu. Whatever she wanted, she had it. And at that time, Su Wan was also soft and cute, naturally good to her brother, so the two siblings were especially affectionate, and every time Su Rui was beaten to the point of not being able to get out of bed, it was Su Wan who personally took care of him. Slowly, Su Rui grew up. He was much stronger than Su Wan, because he practiced martial arts all year round. His figure was simply great, and at this time, he finally felt Su Wan's weakness, and began to learn to protect his sister. "A Rui can protect me, I'm really happy." Perhaps this was just an unintentional sentence from Su Wan, but Su Rui always remembered it in his heart. He told himself, he wanted to become stronger, become the strongest, so that he could protect his sister for a lifetime. Protect his sister. Su Rui felt that he suddenly found the true meaning of life, but when he was extremely busy, they slowly grew up, and in the blink of an eye, Su Wn reached the age of marriage. Su Rui still remembered that it was spring. That was the second time he returned from an expedition, imagining that it could be like last time. As soon as he entered the door, he saw his sister's brilliant smile, and heard her say to him, Rui is very powerful. You are the most powerful man sister has ever seen. Full of that kind of expectation, Su Rui entered the door but didn't see that familiar figure. At that moment, he was flustered. He always knew that his sister's body was not good, and he was always so worried about her outside. But in the brilliant peach forest, seeing her gently nestled in Shenyuan Rui's embrace, Su Rui felt that his whole world was collapsing at that moment. Sister didn't need him anymore, sister didn't like him anymore, sister didn't need his protection anymore, sister abandoned him. At that moment, Su Rui was angry. His anger ignited the last bit of light in his heart. Su Wan, do you think that Shenyuan Rui really loves you? The men outside are not trustworthy. Only I am the one who wholeheartedly protects you. Why don't you understand? From then on, their relationship became estranged and strange. Su Rui also realized that Su Wan began to avoid him, so much so that she was afraid of him approaching, afraid of the kind of persistent and ruthless eyes he looked at her. Although Su Wan and Shenyuan Rui's marriage was not decreed by His Majesty, but it was also a mutual love, making others envious. On the day before she and Shenyuan Rui got married, the drunk Su Rui rushed into Su Wan's room with a sword. If you dare to marry him, I will kill you. That night, Su Wan, who was always weak, was incomparably tough. Even if she had to die, she also wanted to be Shenyuan Rui's person. In the end, Su Rui naturally couldn't bear to make a move on his sister, but he fiercely said that once she got married, she was not allowed to step into Su family in this lifetime, unless she left Shenyuan Rui. On the day he said those words, Su Rui probably didn't think that Su Wan would really come back in her lifetime. After all, in the original plot, even if she was spurned and abandoned by Shenyuan Rui, Su Wan still wholeheartedly loved him until death. These memories about Su Rui did not exist in this world's plot, but only existed in the depths of the original owner's memory. When Su Wan obtained these memories, she knew that she would win. She had been dealt the best card of all. It was said that one shouldn't be afraid of a godlike enemy, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Su Wan understood more clearly than anyone that Su Rui was a godlike teammate to her. With him, this seriously ill Deepwell Ice, there was no pressure to trap that scum to death. Right. Just dark red-purple. Facing Deepwell Ice, one must use strong medicine. Thus, the unconscious Su Wan pretended to frown along with the jolting of the carriage, then lightly trembled her eyelashes. Jie. Just a moment ago, Su Rui had a sinister expression on his face that all humans who had betrayed his fish lips deserved to die. When he felt that Su Wan was about to wake up, he immediately became gentle and anxious. Jie, you're awake? Su Wan still hadn't opened her eyes when she groped and grabbed the back of Su Rui's hand. Rui, Jie has nothing. Jie, you still have me. Su Rui's voice carried a bit of fanaticism. You still have me. I will always be by your side to protect you. Chapter 7. General Su's Fu was located in the northwest corner of the capital. These years, General Su had been guarding the border and rarely returned to the capital. Therefore, the entire Fu was under Su Rui's control. Su Rui did not know that Su Wan was always awake. Seeing that she was drowsy and sometimes talking nonsense, Su Rui was very worried and called for a doctor. In the capital, everyone knew that the Sai family's medical skills were the best. But when he thought of Sai Yu, that beast in human clothing, harboring ill intentions towards his sister, Su Rui decisively gave up on the idea of inviting the Sai family. The grizzled-haired imperial doctor took Su Wan's pulse and reported her body's condition to Su Rui. Because of her recuperation, although Su Wan's body was still very weak, her life was not in danger. After sending off the imperial doctor, Su Rui sat at the bedside and stared at Su Wan until the sky began to brighten. Su Rui then got up and stared at Lu Zhu with a gloomy face. Look after your master, if there is any mishap, I will chop you. Chop, you. Lu Zhu shivered and curled her body into a ball. Although she had left the General Fu for 4 years, but she was very clear about her young master's temperament. In the past few years, the people in the princess's courtyard had changed batch after batch, and in the end, she was the only one left who could marry into the prince's mansion. The others. Well, you guessed right. The others were all chopped, minced, and fed to the dogs by the young master because they did not take good care of the princess. The methods were extremely cruel and the scene was extremely bloody. Thinking that she had returned to the General Fu and would have to live under the young master's cruelty, Lu Zhu suddenly felt that there was nothing left to live for. On the first night back in the General Fu, Su Wen had a rare good night's sleep. The next day, she had just opened her eyes when she smelled the fragrance of food in the room. Su Wen doubtfully propped herself up and saw a group of maids bringing in plates of exquisite breakfast. Princess, the general ordered us to serve the princess breakfast. A group of maids lined up in a row. The ostentation was even more exaggerated than in Yu Wangfu. Su Wan used her fingers to gently rub her eyebrows. Did this crazy sister lover become even more ill? With her small body, small mouth, and small stomach, even if she opened her arms and ate, how much could she eat? However, this kind of simple life where they could have their clothes stretched out in their hands and food opened in their mouths was definitely much better than in the cold garden of the Yu Wangfu. Su Wan contentedly ate her breakfast. Knowing that Su Rui would not be back for a while, Su Wan simply let Lu Zhu help her to stroll around the General's Fu. The General's Fu was very big, with pavilions, terraces, towers and winding corridors. In her memory, the courtyard that belonged to the main residence was now very desolate and deserted. Su Wan also asked the servants in the residence and found out that no one had lived in the main courtyard for a long time. The old general hadn't returned for many years and the princess had been recuperating in the other courtyard because of her poor health. The servant spoke tactfully, but Su Wan knew that Su Rui and his mother's relationship was very stiff, especially when Su Rui strongly opposed Su Wan's marriage, causing the family to fall apart. Right now, the Su family only belonged to Su Rui. What a lonely child. When Su Wan leaned against the pavilion and was deep in thought, she saw Su Rui wearing a military general's court attire rushing towards her. Elder sister, why aren't you resting in your room? Perhaps because of his dark character, Su Rui's face looked very cold and sharp. Normally, his entire body was shrouded in a layer of haze that could not be dispersed. But at this moment, Su Rui looked very gentle. In fact, his facial features were very handsome. As long as he calmed down, he would be a very handsome and gentle youth. Seeing Su Rui's figure, Su Wan's eyes brightened. Not caring about her weak body, she stumbled forward and suddenly grabbed Su Rui's sleeve. Where is he? Where is he? Su Rui's eyes flashed a trace of malevolence, but it was quickly replaced by gentleness. Elder sister, you just returned home, first take a good rest, other matters, we will wait. I can't wait. Su Wan's voice was weak, but very sharp. I have nowhere to go, I have nothing. I can't wait any longer. At this moment, she was simply a resentful woman, vividly expressing her resentment and misery after being abandoned. I won't let him have it easy. I won't let them have it easy. Su Wan was still muttering to herself, her eyes flashed with resentment and struggle. Su Rui had never seen Su Wan like this. He was stunned for a moment, thinking of how Shenyuan Rui turned his elder sister into this. His hatred towards that man surged, unable to be suppressed. Last night's calm farewell, was it just the last trace of pride and dignity that his elder sister maintained in front of others? She was originally a golden branch and jade leaf, should be cherished in the palm of everyone's hand. Why should she be so cruelly defiled by that man? I'll help you kill him. Su Rui suddenly grasped Su Wan's hand, his eyes flashing with blood-red madness. He would do what he said, even if he lost everything. Su Wan stared blankly for a moment, but carefully hid her astonishment at that moment. Her eyes absent-mindedly looked at Su Rui. So what if I kill him? Let him and Yi Jihua become a pair of doomed mandarin ducks. No, I can't let him off so easily. As if caught in her own nightmare, Su Wan's pale face flashed with complex hatred. Aren't they true love? I want them to turn against each other, Doesn't he, Shen Yuan Rui, want that position? I want him to lose everything. Who doesn't know how to kill? Su Wan had crossed many worlds and learned many ways to kill, but she had never personally killed anyone. First, the rules didn't allow it. Second, she disdained killing people. She never felt that she was a good person. Because of this, she could be so righteous and merciless, treacherous and treacherous. Wanting to kill a person was really too simple. The process of death was also too short. This was not the pleasure that Su Wan wanted. She liked to take it slow, destroy a person's faith, destroy his life. Of course, she also had to destroy their love. What is true love? Su Wan had personally broken up many couples and watched their so-called true love fall apart bit by bit in front of her own eyes. Love, that thing, basically never existed. Su Wan's hatred and resentment seemed to also infect Su Rui, who was beside her. He suppressed the clamoring thoughts of wanting to kill Shen Yuan Rui, calmed his heart, deeply looked at Su Wan. If this is what sister wants, I will give it to you. Let's go, I will accompany you to drink the medicine, then, I will bring you to see them. Su Wan nodded. The moment she lowered her head, her eyes flashed with a touch of light. She was still a bit looking forward to the first meeting with the woman who crossed over and the fifth prince. Chapter 8. The empty stone room was gloomy, but it was not damp. The oil lamp in the room flickered. Yi Jin and Shen Yuan Qing were sitting at the center of the stone table. Both of them were wearing black robes. Their complexions were not very good. Clang clang. The door of the stone room was pushed open, accompanied by the sound of chains falling to the ground. The two people subconsciously looked towards the door. The first thing they saw was a fiery red color. Dazzling red, dazzling red. Su Wan was wearing a bright red palace dress. Supported by Su Rui, she slowly walked into the stone room. Shen Yuan Qing narrowed his eyes. Xiao Wan? Hearing Shen Yuan Qing's low and hoarse voice, Su Wan raised her eyebrows, looking at the legendary domineering original male lead. Although he recently experienced a series of setbacks, even escaping from death, Shen Yuan Qing still had a calm appearance. Only the unconcealable weariness and haggardness on his face betrayed his current situation. Fifth cousin. Su Wan nodded at Shen Yuan Qing, and secretly glanced at Yi Jin. At this moment, the eyes of the transmigrated woman flashed. The joy on her face was almost overflowing. Su Wan, the eldest daughter of the General Fu, Shen Yuan Rui's Wangfei. Yi Jin naturally knew Su Wan. She also knew that ever since Yi Hua married into Yu Wangfu, Su Wan and Shen Yuan Rui had a relationship crisis. And now, she and Shen Yuan Qing should have been killed by Shen Yuan Rui and Yi Hua, but they were suddenly saved by the Su siblings. The twists and turns of this matter, Yi Jin thought for a moment and immediately understood. At this moment, Yi Jin's heart was incomparably excited. She knew it. She knew it. As a transmigrated woman, how could she be so muddlehead and defeated by Yi Hua, that stupid transmigrated woman? There can only be one main character in this world, it must be her. Transmigrating or rebirth, if used well, then one will be a winner in life, but once things get out of control, then it will absolutely harm others and oneself. In the previous life, Yi Jin looked down on the aboriginals of this world too much. She couldn't help but tell Yi Hua her identity as a transmigrated woman before her death. The result was that Yi Hua was actually reborn. What was the cycle of karma? In this life, before death, Yi Hua, who thought that victory was in her grasp, went to the death row to visit Yi Jin. She leisurely told her the story of her past life. At that time, Yi Jin was in despair. She didn't think that she would not only encounter transmigration, she would also be reborn to take revenge. She originally thought that she was the female lead, but in the end, after meeting Yi Hua, she immediately became the female lead who was counterattacked. On the day of the execution, Yi Jin didn't have any hope, but a miracle happened at that time. The moment before she was beheaded, behind the white cloth of the execution platform, she and Shen Yuan Qing were swap. During this period of time, the two of them had been locked up in this stone room. Someone had sent them food and drinks on time, but the owner of this stone room had never appeared. Yi Jijin had imagined a lot of possibilities, and now that she saw Su Wan and Su Rui, she immediately imagined a melodramatic drama of husband and wife falling out with each other. Why did you save us? Compared to Yi Jijin's excitement, Shen Yuanqing seemed especially indifferent. He quietly looked at the two people at the door, and finally his gaze fell on Su Wan. I just don't want to see Shen Yuanrui and Yi Jihua so proud. Su Wan somewhat bitterly smiled. What Shen Yuanrui wants, I want to destroy. Fifth Biao Ge, I know that you have your own people outside of the capital. You want to make a comeback? Make a comeback? Shen Yuanqing's eyes flashed. Price? What price do I have to pay? Now that he has lost his identity as a prince, other than those forces outside of the capital, he has no other value. So in this cooperation, he was obviously at a disadvantage. Price Su Wan secretly laughed in her heart, the price is naturally, your lives are. Of course, how could she say this out loud? That would hurt the hearts of her companions. I just don't want to let Shen Yuanrui and Yi Jihua go. Su Wan's gaze was filled with hatred that couldn't be dispersed. As long as they are not happy, then I am happy. Biao Ge, you don't have to pay any price. Of course, if you don't believe us, you can leave now. I guarantee that you can safely leave the capital. A woman, once she goes crazy for love, she can do anything. The current Su Wan, in everyone's eyes, is such a crazy woman. Shen Yuanqing was silent for a while. Yi Jijin also calmed down. Although she wanted to immediately agree to Su Wan's conditions, she knew Shen Yuanqing's temper very well, so at this time, she didn't dare to rashly open her mouth. A woman from the modern era, no matter how strong and independent she was when she first crossed over, after a long time, she will slowly integrate into this world, get used to this era, and even gradually lose her initial pride and ego. Happy cooperation. After a long time, Shen Yuanqing once again raised his head, smiling at Su Wan and Su Rui. From beginning to end, Su Rui, who was standing behind Su Wan, didn't say a word, but this time, Shen Yuanqing's gaze stayed on Su Rui for a long time. Su family is a double-edged sword, it can kill the enemy invisibly, but it can also make one's blood splatter 3 feet. Shen Yuanqing knew that Su Wan's temperament was originally the most docile, now she became like this because she was hurt by Shen Yuanrui, and Su Rui. Su Rui is the person he should guard against the most. Chapter 9. Coming out of the secret room, Su Wan fiercely coughed again. Her lips even had a little bit of blood. At this moment, no matter how exquisite her makeup was, it couldn't cover the deathly paleness of her face. Jie. Su Rui's voice was flustered like never before. Seeing the panic in Su Rui's eyes, Su Wan subconsciously raised her hand and gently held his hand. It's okay, I'm fine. Su Wan somewhat reluctantly smiled at Su Rui. That smile had already seen through life and death. Su Wan's body became very poor, as if she suddenly returned to the days when she was beyond cure. This made Su Rui extremely anxious. In the end, he could only go to Sai Jiao and invite Physician Sai. After not seeing him for a few days, Physician Sai looked a lot thinner. Even if Su Rui didn't like Physician Sai, regarding Su Wan's life and death, Su Rui could only compromise. At this time, in the elegantly decorated room, there were only Su Wan and Physician Sai. You've lost weight. Su Wan looked at Physician Sai, who was at the bedside, and spoke somewhat hoarsely. Physician Sai froze for a moment and looked at Su Wan's gaze with more heartache. He knew what happened that night in Yu Wangfu. He knew that Su Wan left and also knew that she was unconscious and was taken away by Su Rui. He couldn't imagine Su Wan's mood at that moment. Was it despair? Or pain? How can you not cherish yourself? Physician Sai took Su Wan's pulse and found out that her condition was serious. It was all because she couldn't eat or sleep well and was depressed. Su Wan didn't answer Physician Sai's question. Her gaze drifted and looked at the table not far away. Physician Sai, what do you think people live for? For themselves? For others? For love or for something else? Junju. Call me by my name. Su Wan lowered her eyes and gave Physician Sai a shallow smile. You are my only friend. When I was young, my body wasn't good and I rarely left the general Fu. Later, I went to the imperial city to study and met a few cousins there. Speaking up to here, Su Wan's voice lowered. If time could flow back, how good would that be? Physician sigh. Su Wan didn't know what she was thinking, but she suddenly extended her soft and cold little hand and grabbed Physician Sai's big hand. Your medical skills are so amazing. Can you help me research a kind of medicine? Let me forget how to love a person. Loving someone was really too painful. It really hurts. Su Wan. Physician Sai's heart suddenly ached. Somewhat involuntarily, he raised his arm and half-hugged Su Wan. Don't be like this. The world is so big, there will always be someone who loves you, waiting for you. You are so good, there will be many people who love you. So, you have to live well, understand? Live well. Su Wan seemed to be a bit tired, her whole body powerlessly shrunk into Physician Sai's embrace. I also want to live well, but as long as I think of cousin right now living with Yi Jihua, my heart will ache. How can he be so cruel, saying he doesn't love and then he doesn't love? Then what did I do for all those years? I couldn't convince myself, I couldn't deceive my own heart. Sometimes I would even think maliciously, if one day cousin also abandoned Yi Jihua, then maybe I would be able to let it go, I wouldn't feel so painful. Saiyu, do you think I am very bad? Perhaps Biao Ji and Yi Jihua are right. I am a vicious woman. No, you are not. Physician Sai tightened his arms. You are not, they are. They are. Hearing Physician Sai's words, Su Wan's excited mood seemed to calm down a lot. She slowly closed her eyes. Physician Sai, has anyone said that your embrace is especially comfortable? Unknowingly, Su Wan actually meekly leaned on Physician Sai's embrace and fell asleep. Her sleeping appearance was especially tranquil. Physician Sai didn't dare to move, he was also reluctant to move. He gently and motionlessly hugged her. At night, Lu Zhu made a new medicinal soup for Su Wan according to Physician Sai's new prescription. This time, Su Wan was very cooperative and drank all the soup. After eating the medicine, under Lu Zhu's care, Su Wan bathed and changed her clothes as usual, turned off the lights and went to bed. Not long after, Su Wan's long and even breathing sound came from the bed. Seeing that her master had finally fallen asleep, Lu Zhu felt relieved and went to rest on the small bed in the side hall. In the middle of the night, there was an extra shadow in front of Su Wan's bed. That figure had been quietly sitting at the head of her bed. Even in the darkness, that pair of eyes that stared at her were still bright and focused. Su Wan, who was on the bed, didn't feel anything. She seemed to be sleeping uncomfortably. She gently turned over and the brocade quilt on her shoulder slid down along with her movements. The person on the bedside seemed to frown and raised his hand to pull the quilt up until Su Wan's entire body was wrapped in the quilt. Only then did that person stop in satisfaction. Afterwards, he attentively looked at her until dawn. The next day, Su Wan's spirit was pretty good. With Physician Sai's treatment, she naturally didn't need to think of ways to ruin her body. Now that everything was ready, it was time to harvest. Capital, Yi Fu. These past few days, the Yi family's days were especially bad. Originally, when Yi Jihua became the Yu Wangfei, the Yi family should have been proud and elated, but who knew that on the second day after Yi Jihua was conferred the title of Yu Wangfei, Imperial Censor Yi was reported to the court. Not only was his salary deducted for 3 months, even the other officials of the Yi family were implicated. Each and every one of the ministers in the court were troublemakers. Who did this Yi family offend? They were very clear in their hearts. Who dared to stand up for Yi family? Didn't you see that His Highness Yu Wangye could only sulk and not speak? Because he had wronged Su Wan, Shenyuan Rui was in the wrong. When His Majesty conferred the title of Yi Jihua, he turned a blind eye. No one expected that when the dust settled, Su Rui would suddenly rise up and counterattack. His Majesty had always valued Su family. Su Rui and Su Wan's mother were also members of the imperial family. He thought that the two families were relying on the marriage alliance to be unbreakable. Su Wan marrying Shenyuan Rui could be considered as adding a tie on top of a tie. But halfway through, Yi Jihua appeared. Everything began to become chaotic. At this time, His Majesty seemed to have forgotten his tacit consent. He only thought that Shenyuan Rui was a hero who couldn't resist the charms of a beauty. Because of his personal feelings, he delayed official business. This made His Majesty a little dissatisfied with his son who he had always doted on. And Shenyuan Rui? He had even more difficulties that he couldn't speak of. Originally, after eradicating Shenyuan Qing, this sinister and cunning obstacle, and tying the knot with his beloved, it should have been the most indulgent and wanton day in his life. But Su Wan's sudden departure and Su Rui's fierce attack suddenly made Shenyuan Rui's life a mess. His Majesty hinted to Shenyuan Rui to bring Su Wn back to Yu Wangfu. He even wanted Yi Zhihua to return the position of Wangfei to Su Wan. Regarding this proposal, Shenyuan Rui naturally refused. At this time, Yi family was besieged on all sides. Again and again, they went to Yu Wangfu for help. Yi Zhihua had the will but the strength was insufficient. Because her heart was too heavy, she fell ill again. Shenyuan Rui had no choice but to ask Physician Sai to come over and take care of her. Yi Zhihua, who was lying on the sickbed, had a pale face, a pitiful appearance. Physician Sai looked at her sickly appearance and unknowingly thought of Su Wn coughing up blood in a weak state. In his heart, his bad impression towards Yi Zhihua increased again. Imperial Physician Sai, I heard that you went to the General Fu a few days ago. Although she didn't want Su Wan and Shenyuan Rui to have any connection, Yi Zhihua unconsciously wanted to pay attention to Su Wan's every move. In fact, Yi Zhihua also understood His Majesty's meaning. If it was her in the previous life, as long as she had the opportunity to be together with Shenyuan Rui, she would be satisfied. Even if she didn't have a title, it didn't matter. But now it was different. Now she was Yu Wangfei, Shenyuan Rui's official wife. They were husband and wife, loving each other, deeply affectionate. Tasting too much sweetness, her heart slowly became dissatisfied. Shenyuan Rui was hers. Why should she give him to Su Wan? Su Wan was clearly a person who was about to die. Why did she still want to snatch her beloved man when death was imminent? At this time, although Yi Zhihua's complexion was weak, Physician Sai could still see the different emotions in her eyes. After pondering for a moment, Physician Sai sighed, Ari, I went to see Xiao Juanju's illness. Her body. Su Junju, what's wrong? Yi Zhihua's eyes flashed, tightly staring at Physician Sai's face. Junju, she is terminally ill, unable to sleep at night. Speaking to hear, Physician Sai's eyes darkened, his face had a bit of sadness. She is living. In pain. Perhaps it was because he thought of that day when Su Wan leaned in his embrace. Physician Sai's voice unconsciously carried a bit of heartache. But Yi Zhihua didn't notice Physician Sai's mood. In her mind, there were only the words terminally ill, lasting for a long time. Junju is really pitiful. Yi Zhihua looked at Physician Sai with a pitiful gaze. I only had an ordinary cold in my body and it's already so uncomfortable. Presumably, Junju is seriously ill right now. I'm afraid her life is worse than death. Thinking of her being tortured by illness, my heart doesn't feel good. Rather than being tormented by illness, perhaps quietly leaving is the best release for her. While speaking, Yi Zhihua carefully observed Physician Sai's reaction. Yi Zhihua, who was known as a talented woman since childhood, always felt that she was very smart. Especially after her rebirth, the feeling of being able to devise strategies made her feel that she was always a cut above others. In fact, when Physician Sai first came to the Wangfu to treat her illness, Yi Zhihua saw that this Physician Sai was a soft-hearted person and seemed to have a good impression of her. If she could use this good impression, it has to be said that Yi Zhihua was indeed a bit clever. She who had been reborn, knew how to use her resources and advantages. Unfortunately, she clearly used the wrong time. Hearing Yi Zhihua's words, Physician Sai's eyes turned cold, but his face carried a serious expression. Wangfei doesn't want Junju to suffer, she is really kind, but even ants live without purpose. Junju may be living in pain, but no matter how painful it is to live, it is still better than dying, right? I am a doctor, I only know how to treat illnesses and save lives, I will never give up on any patient. Hearing Physician Sai's words, Yi Zhihua froze for a moment, then awkwardly turned her gaze away. What Imperial Physician Sai said makes sense, I just Just feel too sorry for Junju, that's all. The more sincere her performance was, the colder Physician Sai's gaze became, what is kindness? What is viciousness? Physician Sai thought of what Su Wn said that day. She never hid her hatred in her heart. Even if she had malicious thoughts, she would always speak bluntly. People are not saints, who doesn't have their own selfish desires? Chapter 10. When Xian Yuan Rui and His Majesty were somewhat unhappy because of Su Wan's matter, no one knew when some rumors about Su Wan and Xian Yuan Rui began to circulate in the capital. Those rumors said that Xian Yuan Rui was seduced by Yi Zhihua and thus abandoned his childhood sweetheart Wang Fei. And the reason why Yi Zhihua was able to successfully ascend to the throne was naturally because she used many methods, the most powerful of which was the method in bed. This rumor became more and more widespread. Slowly, in the rumor, Xian Yuan Rui became a fickle and lustful hedonistic Wangye. And Yi Zhihua also changed from a talented woman that everyone loved to someone that everyone despised. These rumors were naturally spread by Su Wan's people. When Xian Yuan Rui was furious because of this, the direction of the rumors changed again. According to an insider of Yu Wangfu, the reason why Yi Zhihua was able to successfully ascend to the throne was because of Su Wan. Su Wan married into Yu Wangfu for 4 years, and because of her poor health, she did not consummate the marriage with His Highness Yu Wangye. When this news came out, it was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Originally, Su Wan was recuperating at home. Due to the recent raging rumors, not many people came to visit her. However, when the latest news came out, the other Wangye who were originally ready to make trouble immediately appeared at the entrance of General Su Fu. A Su Wan who was abandoned by Xian Yuan Rui, perhaps could only become their ally. But, a Su Wan who had never been touched by Xian Yuan Rui could become their Wang Fei. The people of the imperial family had always been selfish. For the sake of imperial power and benefits, they could do anything. That year, General Su Fu was highly regarded. Many princes repeatedly expressed their goodwill to Su Wan, but Su Wan liked Xian Yuan Rui. At that time, Xian Yuan Rui was also doted on by His Majesty. The other princes could only helplessly watch Su Wan marry into Yu Wangfu. Who would have thought that after 4 years, everything suddenly took a turn for the better? The willow flowers blossomed. After a period of meticulous nursing by Physician Sai, Su Wan's complexion was very good and her body was much better. When she received the visiting cards from the 4th and 6th princes, Su Wan was playing on the swing in the garden. On the gilded visiting card, there was a man's vigorous and powerful handwriting. So 4th Biao has already returned to the capital. Su Wan muttered to herself. Beside her, Lu Zhu's hand that was pushing the swing suddenly stopped. The 4th prince, Shenyuan Yi. In Lu Zhu's memory, the 4th prince was a very gloomy person, with a black face and a cold heart. He was not willing to interact with the nobles in the capital. When he came of age, he recommended himself to the farthest Yuzhou from the capital. She did not expect that he would quietly return to the capital. Shenyuan Yi. Su Wan looked at the visiting card and looked at it. Unknowingly, the corner of her mouth slowly hooked up into a shallow and charming arc. Very happy. A gloomy voice suddenly rang above Su Wan's head, and then the visitation card in her hand was snatched by someone. Su Rui didn't even look at it and tore the greeting card in his hand into pieces and threw it on the ground. In the end, he used his black boots to forcefully stomp on it a few times until the gold-stamped greeting card was completely crushed into the soil. Su Rui then stopped. Childish. Su Wan looked up and met Su Rui's bottomless eyes. The two of them stared at each other quietly, neither backing down, neither saying a word. Not knowing how much time had passed, Lu Zhu, who had been lowering her head to reduce her presence, suddenly thought of something, took a step forward, and said with a trembling voice, "Young master, the princess should take her medicine." Although Su Wan was much better, she still couldn't stop taking medicine for her 3 meals a day. Su Rui's gaze flashed, and in the next moment, he had already stepped forward in large strides and abruptly carried Su Wan from the swing horizontally. Yes, Su Wan was hugged by him and moved a little uncomfortably, but in exchange, Su Rui used even more strength to confine her. Raising her head, it was as if she could feel Su Rui's cold breath. Su Wan simply hung her head and stopped moving. Returning to the room, the servants in the residence had already finished brewing the medicinal soup. The steaming hot medicinal soup exuded a strong bitter taste. After putting Su Wan on the bed, Su Rui didn't say anything else and started to feed Su Wan the medicine. From beginning to end, he didn't say a single word. His actions were straightforward and efficient, not gentle at all. Su Wan started to miss Physician Sai's cautiousness. Wasn't he supposed to be a big sister control monster? Will it kill you to give me some sweetness? Are you trying to make me suffer to death by feeding me medicine like this? Su Wan held her breath, but still sullenly drank the whole bowl of medicinal soup. After finishing the medicine, Lu Zhu habitually wiped Su Wan's lips and retreated to the side. Seeing Su Rui still sitting on the bed, Su Wan glanced at him, then immediately turned her body and lay on the bed with her back facing Su Rui. She had a look of "I don't want to bother with you." Su Rui didn't move, nor was he angry. He just maintained his position, staring at Su Wan's back in a daze. Until he was sure that Su Wan had fallen asleep, Su Rui then slowly got up. After whispering a few words to Lu Zhu, Su Rui left. That afternoon, Su Rui wrote a letter to the 4th and 6th prince respectively and gave it to his secret guards to bring out of the general fu. Recently, the capital was becoming more and more lively. While the princes were getting restless and Xian Yuan Rui was badly battered, no one noticed that the 5th prince, Xian Yuan Qing, who was supposed to be beheaded, had already quietly left the capital. Moreover, he went to Huaizhou, which was the closest to the capital, to contact his own people. Yi Jin did not leave with Xian Yuan Qing. First, she was a woman. Following Xian Yuan Qing to the camp of the private army was inconvenient. Second, she wanted to stay in the capital and personally deal with Yi Zhihua. Because of the increasingly outrageous rumors, Yi Zhihua's reputation became bad. This made her suffer a big blow and her illness became more and more serious. On this day, Yi Zhihua had just taken the medicine and was about to fall asleep when she heard the sound of the wind blowing open the window. "Qing Liu, Qing Liu." Yi Zhihua called out to her personal maid a few times but there was no response. She drowsily opened her eyes. In the darkness, there was a shadowy figure. "Qing Liu." Yi Zhihua called out. That figure slowly walked in, his voice hoarse. "Jejie, Jejie, you made me so miserable. I am so miserable. Ah." When she saw that familiar bloody face, Yi Zhihua screamed, then her eyes rolled and she fainted from fright. "Che." Yi Jin looked at Yi Zhihua who fainted from fright. With this kind of courage, she also dared to counterattack. She smirked and took out the blood bag she had prepared beforehand. "Let me give you a gift for our reunion after such a long time. Yi Zhihua, do you think you will be the winner? Truly naive. Ridiculous ah." The next morning, Yi Zhihua's room was filled with screams. When Xian Yuan Rui rushed over, he saw Yi Zhihua with disheveled hair, covered in blood, curled up in the innermost part of the bed, shivering. Using one's spear to attack one's shield, when she left Yi Jin and Xian Yuan Qing alive, she planned to let Yi Zhihua and Yi Jin have a big fight between a transmigrated woman and a reborn woman. She only needed to watch the fire from the other side. Now, everything was going smoothly, except Su Wan, who was in the general fu, was somewhat confused. Since that day when she received the visiting card, no one came to visit. The 4th prince and the 6th prince all ceased their activities. This was not what she hoped for. Xian Yuan Yi. Su Wan once again remembered the man in her memory who always had a black face. He was a man who knew how to be wise and play it safe. He was a good material to be an emperor. Chapter 11. The weather gradually cooled down and in the blink of an eye, it was a snowy winter day. Su Wan's body gradually recovered under Physician Sai's meticulous care. She began to high-profile and frequently appear at various official banquets. The various officials' children in the capital seemed to know Su Wan for the first time. In the snowy winter day, she always wore a red palace dress. It was really too dazzling and gorgeous. Although her face was still a bit pale, but this little bit of paleness set off her delicate and beautiful facial features. Thanks to the original owner's good fortune, having such a beautiful appearance made Su Wan even more like a fish in water. In the past, Su Wan rarely went out. In her life, there was only that man named Shen Yuan Rui. But now, Su Wan gradually revealed the strengths and talents of the original owner that were neglected by others. Not long after, she became the most popular person in the capital. Although the rumors about Shen Yuan Rui were violently suppressed by the people of Yuangfu, but in private, the common people of the capital were still talking about this topic. Many people were waiting to see Su Wan's fate and also waiting to see Shen Yuan Rui become a joke. If Shen Yuan Rui's life before the age of 20 was smooth sailing, then ever since Su Wan left and Yi Jihua became his legal wife, his life began to be full of troubles. Yi Jihua was suspicious at the beginning and later often had hallucinations. She would also say some inexplicable words every now and then. Shen Yuan Rui was very distressed at the beginning and found a lot of people to treat her, but there was no effect. Even physician Sai was helpless about Yi Jihua's situation. In the end, Shen Yuan Rui could only invite a Taoist priest from a temple outside the capital to the Wangfu. The result made him even more upset. Wang Ye, please forgive this poor Taoist for speaking bluntly. Wang Ye, you and Wang Fei's 8 characters are incompatible and are not suitable to be together. If you continue to force yourself to be together, at best, you will be in trouble. At worst, you will lose your life. Regarding the Taoist priest's words, Shen Yuan Rui flew into a rage. If Yi Jihua did not help him, he was afraid that he would have already been killed by Shen Yuan Qing, that ambitious person. How could her 8 characters be incompatible with his? When they got married, they looked for the imperial astronomer to have their 8 characters matched. 8 characters. Shen Yuan Rui told himself that the Taoist priest must have seen wrongly, but, thinking of the recent events, Shen Yuan Rui hesitated. What if what the Taoist priest said was true? Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? Ever since the two of them got together, he kept encountering trouble, and Yi Jihua was also plagued with a strange illness. After being vexed for a few days, Shen Yuan Rui finally sent people to the imperial astronomer and Yi Mansion to secretly investigate. The results he obtained made him shocked. Yi Ji's 8 characters were fake. When she married him, she actually used Yi Jijin's birthdate and 8 characters. With the deepening of the investigation, the matter of Yi Jihua and Yi Jijin swapping their birth characters and letting Yi Jijin replace Yi Jihua to marry Shen Yuan Qing were all exposed. For a moment, Shen Yuan Rui's entire person was somewhat stupefied. Why would Jihua lie to him? Was it only because she didn't want to marry Shen Yuan Qing? Was there any other conspiracy behind this? It had to be said that Shen Yuan Rui was also an expert at scheming and scheming. Otherwise, how could he mix with the wind and water in the royal family? With the bad things happening one after another, Shen Yuan Rui's mind that was muddled by love began to gradually sober up. His IQ also rose in a straight line. This deep thought made Shen Yuan Rui scared himself into a cold sweat. If everything was a trap from the beginning, then, how terrible was the person behind the scenes? That's why it was said that conspirators loved to imagine, and the result of imagining too much was purple dripping. Yi Jihua's spirit was not the same as before. Originally, Shen Yuan Rui would accompany her every day, speaking gently and softly, allowing Yi Jihua's frightened heart to settle down. But now, because of his suspicions and scruples towards Yi Jihua, Shen Yuan Rui very rarely appeared in Yi Jihua's courtyard. This kind of change happened quietly. At first, Yi Jihua didn't notice it, but after a long time, she finally panicked. She didn't care that she was sick and tired. She repeatedly barged into Shen Yuan Rui's study, wanting to see him. But the result of the two meeting was naturally not on good terms. It was almost the end of the year. All the vassals had to return to the capital to report. Shen Yuan Rui had long received the news that many of the royal family's children had their eyes on Su Wan. And 1 month later, Su Yufeng would also return to the court to report. In order to stabilize the Su family, His Majesty had already planned to once again unite by marriage with the Su family. As for the marriage partner, it was all up to the Su family to choose. Once he thought that his childhood sweetheart was going to marry someone else's wife, Shen Yuanrui's mood became extremely irritable. Recently, he had already tried to avoid meeting Su Wan, but there were still a few times when he saw her from afar. In his memory, that sickly and gentle young girl was now so bright and beautiful. Everyone said that Physician Sai's medical skills were superb, but Shen Yuanrui didn't expect that Physician Sai would actually put in so much effort for Su Wan. He used the 100-year-old medicine that had been passed down in the Sai family for many years to help Su Wan recuperate. Only then did she gradually recover. Now, Su Wan could already live like a normal person, even getting married and having children. Every time he thought of this, Shen Yuanrui's heart burned with jealousy. The young girl that he cherished for so many years, he didn't even touch her. But in the future, she would have to be under another man's body. Just thinking about this kind of scene, Shen Yuanrui felt that he couldn't accept it. It could be said that at this time, Shen Yuanrui was somewhat regretful. But he didn't regret that day when he abandoned Su Wan and sent her to the cold garden. He only regretted that when Su Wan left that night, he didn't try his best to keep her. After all, according to the situation at that time, Su Wan still had deep feelings for him. As long as Su Wan still stayed in Yuangfu, then Su family would still stand on his side. Seeing that the day of great General Su's return to the capital was getting closer and closer, all the forces were getting restless. Finally, Shen Yuanrui couldn't help but hand over the visiting card to the General Fu. Yu Wangfu's visiting card was directly sent to Su Rui's hands by the housekeeper. Looking at the big words on the visiting card, Su Rui just sneered with some disdain. This Shen Yuanrui's face is really thick enough. The housekeeper at the side saw that Su Rui's tone wasn't good, and immediately asked obediently, "Young master, do you want to reject the people from Yu Wangfu?" "No, don't reject." Su Rui narrowed his eyes. The baleful aura that he originally restrained filled the whole room at this moment. There are really too many eyesores, settling them all at once is also a good thing. Chapter 12. On the third day of the 12th lunar month, General Su Yufeng, who had been guarding the border, finally returned to the capital. Due to the heavy snow that had just fallen a few days ago, the official road in the suburbs of the capital was covered in pure white snow. From afar, one could see a long black dragon in the vast silver world, winding all the way. At the Shiliting relay station in the suburbs of the capital, there were 4 furnaces placed in a pavilion with thick curtains. At this moment, the fire was blazing, roasting the faces of the people around it with a thin layer of red. Su Wan was draped in a bright red cloak and quietly sat on the well-prepared velvet blanket. Through the gap between the curtains, she could already see the army gradually approaching from afar. In the memory of the original owner, Su Yufeng was a serious general and also a serious father. He rarely smiled and didn't know how to be gentle. In the General Fu, what Su Yufeng did the most every day was to practice martial arts and study the art of war. This kind of person's life was predetermined to be boring. Moreover, he was a particularly principled person. His bottom line and principles supported him to not make any unforgivable mistakes. This kind of person was a rare loyal official and also a rare talent. Unfortunately, he couldn't handle his own family affairs well. Su Rui sat beside Su Wan. His slender eyes were constantly watching the direction of the army's return. Perhaps it was because he had practiced martial arts since childhood, his eyes and ears were sharper than the average person. Su Rui could see from afar the mighty and tall figure wearing a black armor in front of the tens of thousands of troops and horses. That was his father, Su Yufeng. The father and son's line of sight, separated by a long distance, met in mid-air. There was no joy of reunion after a long time. Su Yufeng's pitch-black eyes carried a trace of sharpness, and Su Rui also fearlessly narrowed his eyes at Su Yufeng provocatively. Since Su Wan got married 4 years ago, the relationship between the father and son had fallen to the freezing point. Now that Su Wan had returned to the Su family, it made the relationship between the father and son, which had been silent for 4 years, become even more incompatible. Not long after, Su Yufeng's troops and horses had already advanced to the vicinity of Shiliting. Su Wan also clearly saw the mighty and austere man facing the north wind. Su Wan tightened her cloak and slowly walked out of the pavilion. The father and daughter met again after 4 years. Su Yufeng's eyes, which were like an ancient well without ripples, slightly wavered. Although his daughter had a weak body since childhood and could not practice martial arts, Su Yufeng still doted on his daughter. A father's love was deep, and he was a man who was not good with words. So in the past few years, the relationship between Su Yufeng and Su Wan could only be considered lukewarm. If it wasn't because of what Su Rui did that year, Su Yufeng wouldn't have not gone to see Su Wan even once in 4 years. Father, since I've married into Yu Wangfu, I'm a member of Yu Wangfu for the rest of my life. In the future, I won't be able to fulfill my filial duties under father. Please forgive me, father. Su Yufeng's mind still clearly remembered the words that Su Wan said on the day of her marriage 4 years ago. That was the first time she revealed that serious and earnest expression in front of him. At that time, Su Yufeng still felt at ease. His daughter finally grew up and had someone she could entrust her life to. Although Su Rui was a bit of a scoundrel, from then on, not seeing each other was perhaps the best ending for them. 4 years of time could not be said to be long, nor could it be said to be short. Unfortunately, everything had already changed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Father. Su Wan and Su Yufeng looked at each other. After a long time, she finally took a step forward and trembled as she opened her mouth. Su Yufeng was about to answer when his gaze suddenly turned cold. Su Rui unhurriedly walked behind Su Wan and especially intimately tightened the cloak on her body. As if there was no one else present, he raised his arms and encircled her in his embrace. Jejia, the wind is strong here. You have to be careful of your body. Although these were gentle and pleasant words, in Su Yufeng's view, Su Rui was blatantly provoking him. This animal. Su Rui. Su Yufeng suddenly pulled out the long spear in his hand and swung it high up in the air. Su Rui seemed to have long been prepared. He spun around while carrying Su Wan and took the opportunity to buckle Su Wan's head into his embrace. Su Rui narrowed his eyes and helplessly looked at his father. Father, I know that your martial arts are superb, but if you can't hold back and accidentally injure Jejia, I will. Feel heartache. This unfilial son. Su Yufeng only felt that a mouthful of old blood was stuck in his throat. He didn't understand how the 3 generations of Su family could give birth to Su Rui, this disobedient little animal. Seeing that Su Yufeng was about to flip out, Su Wan weakly raised her head from Su Rui's embrace and unnoticeably shook her head at Su Yufeng. Father, I'm fine. Seeing that his daughter was so weak yet enduring, Su Yufeng's heart tightened. He suddenly realized that he really wasn't a good father. Sighing deeply at the bottom of his heart, Su Yufeng then raised his hand and commanded the army to continue advancing, return to the capital. Su Rui, take good care of your Jejia. If anything happens to her, you will be the one to blame. Ah! Su Rui only hooked his lips in disdain. The moment he lowered his head, he revealed an incomparably gentle expression towards Su Wan. Jejia, I'll bring you back. Su Wan seemed to accept her fate and didn't struggle. She quietly allowed Su Rui to manipulate her. Returning to the capital, the army received a warm welcome from the common people. At this time, the entrance of the Su Fu was also crowded like a marketplace, very lively. The first thing Su Yufeng did when he returned to the capital was naturally to immediately enter the palace to have an audience with His Majesty. No one knew what Grand General Su and His Majesty discussed, but General Su Fu actually sent a reply to all the people who had previously sent an invitation card. The invitation card indicated the time and invited everyone to attend a banquet at the Su Fu on the 2nd day. Although the purpose of this banquet was not written in the reply card, everyone was well aware that Grand General Su and His Majesty must have reached some kind of agreement, and the crux of this agreement was Su Wan's marriage. In this matter, the imperial family was in the wrong. Now, letting General Su Fu make their own choice was also an understandable matter. Xian Yuan Rui didn't expect that he would also receive a reply card. He thought that Su Yufeng couldn't wait to peel off his skin and tear apart his bones. But in the blink of an eye, thinking of Su Wan's infatuation with him, Xian Yuan Rui also calmed down. Perhaps this was also Su Wan's idea. Once he thought of the woman who was pursued by everyone, wholeheartedly thinking of himself, Xian Yuanrui felt incomparably satisfied and vain. Thinking of Su Wan's current bright and beautiful appearance, Xian Yuanrui felt that his heart seemed to be moved by her again. On the day of the banquet, the sky was not completely dark, yet Su Fu's main entrance was already filled with sedan chairs and horse carriages. Groups of high-ranking officials and dignitaries all wore splendid attire to attend. Compared to the liveliness of the front hall, the backyard where Su Wan lived was very peaceful. She bathed and changed her clothes under the service of Lu Zhu. Her whole person did not seem to be nervous at all. Lu Zhu looked at Su Wan's indifferent face in the mirror and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Junju, must you dance tonight?" Su Wan faintly nodded her head. She had once been a dancer in a certain world for a lifetime. Regarding dancing, this matter was simply a piece of cake. Of course, tonight's dance was not because she was carried out on a whim, nor was it because she wanted to prove how charming she was. Su Wan did not believe in feelings. Regarding those stories of falling in love with a dance and love at first sight, Su Wan had always scoffed at them. Falling in love with a dance. Falling in love with a figure. Love at first sight. Falling in love with a face. She did this tonight just to pass on a signal in front of everyone, to pass on a thought. Following the arrival of the guests, Su Fu's banquet also officially began. But what everyone did not expect was that the person sitting on the main seat was only Su Yufeng. Su Rui quietly sat on the seat below Su Yufeng, and the seat beside Su Yufeng was empty. What about the little Junju? Could it be that her body was not feeling well again? None of the guests present were whispering, but everyone's gazes carried probing and doubt. At this time, Su Yufeng suddenly clapped his hands and a group of stunning dancers wearing long white dresses gracefully poured in. Following the melodious music, the group of dancers danced gracefully and gracefully. Their posture was enchanting. The people present were all members of the royal family and were used to this kind of scene. But in order to leave a good impression on General Su, everyone pretended to be fascinated by the dance. Only Physician Sai sat alone in his seat, his heart constantly thinking about Su Wan's matter. Could it be that she was feeling unwell again? Impossible. He clearly gave her a diagnosis. Her body already had no major problems. Just as Physician Sai's imagination was running wild, a burst of exclamations suddenly came from the hall. Physician Sai curiously raised his eyes and saw the captivating red in the snow white. Su Wan was still wearing a fiery red dress, setting off her even paler complexion. She gracefully danced in the most central position, a silver bell on one of her wrists. As her arm swayed, it echoed crisply. And in her other hand, she held a small and exquisite wine cup. The cup was filled with wine, but when she was dancing, not a single drop of the wine spilled out. So powerful. Everyone was somewhat surprised. They did not expect that the always sickly and weak little Junju was actually a dance master. Xian Yuanrui, who was sitting in his seat, also kept staring at Su Wan. He felt as if he did not understand Su Wan at all. Those years of the past flashed through his mind. Looking at the Su Wan in front of him now, a strange feeling spontaneously arose from the bottom of Xian Yuanrui's heart. Just as the dance ended, everyone felt that Su Wan had completed her performance. When everyone was planning to enthusiastically applaud, they saw Su Wan gracefully somersaulting, and her whole person unexpectedly arrived in front of a certain seat in the banquet hall without a trace. At this moment, the musical instrument stopped and the group of dancers retreated in order. Su Wan, however, was full of smiles as she held the wine cup in both her hands. She handed the wine cup that she had been holding to the front of a man. "I salute you." Chapter 13. The moment Su Wan handed over the wine cup, the entire banquet hall quieted down. All the guests subconsciously looked at the man sitting on the banquet table, some were puzzled and some were stunned. Now, everyone also clearly understood that Su family's banquet was to tell everyone that they don't need to waste their efforts, they have already chosen a son-in-law. Xian Yuanrui tightly clenched the wine cup in his hand. Even though he had already tried his best to control his strength, cracks still appeared on that exquisite porcelain cup. The mellow wine dripped onto his palm drop by drop. Why is it him? How could it be him? Xian Yuan Rui felt that he couldn't accept it, but the other guests all showed an expression of understanding. Imperial Physician Sai. Su Wn still stood there, her gaze softly looking at Physician Sai. I salute you. She repeated the words she just said, finally pulling Physician Sai back to his senses. Physician Sai nervously stood up, his gaze looking straight at Su Wn. Su Junju. Seeing Physician Sai's nervous appearance, Su Wn couldn't help but smile at him again. Without you, there wouldn't be me today. This was like the most intense confession, making Physician Sai's neck immediately turn red. A pair of seemingly peaceful eyes at this moment seemed to ignite a flame. This is what I should do. Physician Sai took the wine cup that Su Wan handed over. At this moment, he felt that everything he did for Su Wan was all worth it. The two people separated by the short table looked at each other with tender feelings. No one dared to make a sound to disturb them. For a moment, the atmosphere in the banquet hall became somewhat strange. Until Physician Sai finished drinking, Su Wan excused herself by saying that she wasn't feeling well and left. Only then did everyone slowly return to their senses. The young Junju left like this. Did it feel like our big group of people came to be witnesses of the two people's mutual affection? In fact, most people's hearts were unbalanced, but Great General Su was here to suppress the scene, and young General Su was also smiling the whole time, making people really scared and flustered. Fortunately, everyone was used to looking for someone more miserable than themselves when they were uncomfortable. So with Xian Yuan Rui's black face as a foil, the other guests instantly felt that their glass hearts were cured. You see, isn't His Highness Prince Yu also here? Look at his black face, he's about to crush his wine glass. Xian Yuan Rui, who completely didn't know that he had been a reference for the whole night, left the Su family. Once he returned to the Yu Wangfu, he went straight to his own backyard. At this time, his heart was filled with anger, and he had no choice but to vent it out. Recently, Yi Zhihua became a lot quieter. Perhaps she was stimulated by Xian Yuan Rui's indifference and suspicion. Recently, she has been quietly staying in her room, occasionally painting some paintings. The number of daily hallucinations is becoming less and less. Tonight, as usual, Yi Zhihua fell asleep early under the care of Qing Liu, who knew that in her sleep, she felt a heavy object pressing down on her body, making it hard for her to breathe. This feeling of suffocation made many images flash through her mind. The Yi family was executed, and he begged bitterly in the death prison. On the execution platform, blood splattered everywhere, and the extreme pain of despair. This was a past life that she could not shake off. Why? She clearly started over again. She clearly killed Yi Zhijin and Shenyuan Qing. Why does she still feel so desperate and afraid? Is it because their ghosts have come back to take revenge? The people of the Xia dynasty believed in ghosts and gods, and Yi Zhihua was a person who had been reborn. She believed in these things even more. Once she thought of being pressed down by a ghost, Yi Zhihua, who was already used to fighting with fierce ghosts, immediately took out a pair of scissors from under her pillow and used all her strength to randomly stab it. I'll kill you all. Don't think of harming me. I am now Yu Wangfei. No one can think of changing my fate. In the dark room, Yi Zhihua screamed again and again, fiercely opened her eyes and glared at the person on top of her. At this moment, her eyes were bloodshot. In addition to extreme fear, there was also a bit of madness mixed in. Who said that people who have died once are not afraid of death? Only people who have truly died once know how important it is to live. In these days of torture, Yi Zhihua collapsed, but there was always a voice in her heart telling her that she must live, she must live. So, at this moment, she crazily revealed her fangs. She was no longer the gentle and kind person in Shenyuan Rui's memory, but this kind of fierce and sinister appearance. Anyone who was forced to this point would be like this. Shenyuan Rui was stunned for a moment. At the moment his movements stiffened, Yi Zhihua's scissors had already cut through Shenyuan Rui's sleeves, drawing a line of blood on his arm. The sudden pain made Shenyuan Rui instantly come back to his senses. He raised his arm and snatched the scissors from Yi Zhihua's hand. A slap flew over. Slut. This slap used 70% of his strength, leaving 5 glaring bloody marks on Yi Zhihua's face. Yi Zhihua was beaten awake, somewhat confused looking at Shenyuan Rui in front of her. Wang ye? Seeing that her husband, who she had not seen for many days, actually came to visit her in the middle of the night, Yi Jihua's heart was happy, struggling to throw herself onto Shenyuan Rui's body, who knew that Shenyuan Rui suddenly got up and gave Yi Jihua a disgusted look. Go back, don't touch Benwa. When he first married Yi Jihua, Shenyuan Rui was infatuated with this woman's beauty and gentleness. Of course, she fully catered to him in bed. Every man who met this kind of woman would be moved. But when this woman's face became sickly, her face revealed an unknown fierceness, Shenyuan Rui suddenly felt that his interest was completely gone. This kind of trash actually made him give up on the little Junju that he had been longing for many years. Shenyuan Rui refused to admit that it was his fault. On the contrary, he increasingly felt that Yi Jihua had ulterior motives. Getting close to him was to provoke the relationship between him and Su Wan, not to mention how vexed Shenyuan Rui was in Yu Wangfu. After the banquet ended, the Su Fu was quieter than ever. None of the guests who had dispersed would have thought that right after they had left, Su Yufeng and his son would immediately start a fight in the banquet hall. Su Yufeng had long wanted to teach Su Rui, this unfilial son, a lesson, and facing his own father's sword, Su Rui also mercilessly counterattacked. This battle between the father and son unexpectedly lasted for a long time. It was hard to determine who was the winner. After midnight, the entire capital was in deep sleep. Su Wan's bedside unknowingly had an additional shadow, but what was different from the past was, this time, Su Wan was awake. In the dark night, her gaze was still clear and indifferent, looking at the person at the bedside, without any extra expression. Looks like, you won? A blood-stained big hand suddenly caressed her face. If you dare to marry Physician Sai, I will castrate him. Su Rui's tone was fierce, coupled with his blood-stained face. In this quiet night, it seemed especially sinister and terrifying. Woo! Su Wan responded, if it's not Physician Sai, then directly chop him up and feed him to the dogs. Su Rui's reply was rather straightforward, not because he treated Physician Sai specially, but because in Su Rui's heart, Su Wan's life was more precious than anyone else's, and the only person who could protect Su Wan was Physician Sai, so Physician Sai could not die, but castrating him, young Master Su felt no pressure. Then if it's you. Su Wan suddenly fixed her gaze on Su Rui, who was at the bedside. Su Rui's fingers stiffened, his whole person also stood rooted to the ground, as if even his breathing had stopped. Seeing Su Rui's appearance, Su Wan was still unforgiving, her eyes rigidly staring at Su Rui's face. I said, if the person who married me is you, then what? Chapter 14. In Su Wan's memory, Su Rui always had a ruthless, overbearing, and conceited appearance. Of course, occasionally, he would also be very unreasonable, ruthless, shameless, and unreasonable. But seeing his panic-stricken appearance, it was really the first time. I said, if the person who marries me is you, then? After saying this, Su Wan was waiting for Su Rui's reaction. Would it be an overbearing CEO's response or a black-bellied snake-like grin? Or was it a sudden accusation of kinship? Su Wan looked expressionless but was actually looking forward to it. Su Rui suddenly acted like a frightened little beast, suddenly retracting his sharp claws and teeth, and then ran away in a sorry state without stopping. What kind of joke was this? Su Wan stared blankly, completely not knowing that she had opened the door to a new world for young Master Su. So I can not only protect my sister, I can also marry her? Young Master Su thought, for so many years, why didn't anyone tell me that? This night, Su Rui did not sleep, his mind was full of Su Wan's words, tossing and turning, torturing Su Rui to the point that he felt like he was going to go crazy. With a whoosh sound, Su Rui, who did not even change his clothes or take a bath the whole night, suddenly rushed out in a hurry. You want to ask the people of Su Fu what they are most afraid of? They will tell you without hesitation, us slaves are, every day when we open our eyes, we beg not to meet young Master R. Young Master not only has a baleful aura, he also has a black aura R. Whoever meets him will have bad luck for a day R. As a result, Lu Zhu, who woke up early today, was in the courtyard in a daze. When she saw Su Rui rush in like the wind, carrying an unpleasant smell of blood on his body. Lu Zhu blinked, and then forcefully blinked again. I must not have woken up, that's why I'm hallucinating. It must be. With a bang sound, Su Wan's bedroom door was kicked open by someone. To be able to do such a thing in Su Fu, besides Su Rui, there was no one else. Su Wn rubbed her eyes and was about to lift the bed curtain, but someone was a step faster than her. Su Rui suddenly lifted the bed curtain, his whole body pressing down on Su Wan. What are you doing? Woo! Su Wan widened her eyes and felt the coldness on her lips. She didn't feel good. She was actually kissed by Su Rui. Little bastard. How dare you take advantage of me? You're dead. Su Wan was furious. He immediately struggled with all his might, and right now, Su Rui's face was actually lifeless. What did he just do? He clearly didn't want to do anything. Who knew that he rushed in too fiercely and the wound on his back started to ache dully again. He lost his balance and fell on Su Wan's body, and then kissed her. Su Wan's lips were especially soft. Perhaps it was because she had just woken up, the temperature of her lips was especially high. At that moment, Su Rui felt as if his entire body was burning. This feeling was indescribable, but it was incomparably clear and profound. Who are you? He suddenly propped himself up and stared fixedly at Su Wan. His gaze was unprecedentedly deep. Who are you? In that moment of incomparable intimacy, he suddenly confirmed some of the conjectures he had been having for a long time in his heart. 4 years ago, the person who clearly said that even if she died, she wouldn't come back. Now, she came back. 4 years ago, the person who looked at him with panic in her eyes could now look at him so indifferently. 4 years ago, the person who made him feel abandoned and betrayed, the person who never wanted to forgive, now suddenly made him flustered. Every dark person's mentality was extreme. Just like Su Rui, that year, he felt that he was abandoned by his sister. After his sister got married, he immediately took control of the Su family and took the initiative to cut off the connection between Su Wan and the Su family. He even sent the dark shaman to secretly watch Su Wan and Lu Zhu. Knowing that she was sent to the cold garden, Su Rui was still indifferent. Since he chose to betray and abandon, then he should have the awareness to bear the consequences. If Su Wan continued to be stubborn like this, even if she died in Yuangfu, Su Rui felt that he would not be indifferent. But she suddenly showed weakness to him. In Su Rui's memory, Su Wan would never let go of Shenyuan Rui, even if she died. He understood his sister even more than he understood himself. So, from the moment Su Wan returned to the Su family, Su Rui had been secretly observing Su Wan. He always had a doubt in his heart, but no matter what, he could not find a suitable answer. Today, at that moment, he suddenly found the answer he had been looking for a long time. What are you talking about? When Su Rui asked, there was a moment when Su Wan's mood fluctuated a bit. Because Su Rui's question, although it was directed at her, she had already seen the answer from his eyes. I know you are not her. Su Rui used a very certain tone this time. Su Wan instantly thought of an excuse. Being hurt by Shenyuan Rui and having a huge change in temperament and whatnot, this kind of excuse was simply too smooth for her to say. Unfortunately, just as she opened her mouth, Su Rui's voice once again interrupted her. What you said is very right, I can marry you. I am your sister. You are messing around. You are not. The resolute and decisive tone once again interrupted Su Wan's words. Su Rui looked at her, his slender eyes carrying a never-before-seen emotion. I will marry you. After saying these 3 words, he did not care about Su Wan's expression. Su Rui's whole body once again fell on the bed, unconscious. Looking at the bloody scene on his back, Su Wan's eyes flashed fiercely. Su Rui, this time bomb, still had a problem, and it was still at such a critical juncture. Almost in that instant, Su Wan's heart had already quickly thought of the 32 moves to get rid of Su Rui. At this time, Lu Zhu's voice sounded outside the door. Princess, princess, this servant. When Lu Zhu's voice sounded, Su Wan immediately tore open her inner clothes and used all her strength to pull the unconscious Su Rui onto her body. Help! Lu Zhu, save me! Father, save me! Su Wan's voice was weak and panicked. Kwong dang, the basin of water in Lu Zhu's hands fell to the ground. She did not dare to look into the room a second time and immediately ran out. Hearing Lu Zhu's distant footsteps, Su Wan relaxed and let out a sigh. Framing Su Rui, this kind of notorious person, was simply too easy. In just a moment, Su Yufeng appeared in Su Wan's courtyard with a murderous aura. Behind him was Lu Zhu, who was running back frantically. "You little bastard." When Su Yufeng entered the door, he saw Su Wan's bed curtain swaying. He could vaguely see Su Rui's figure. At this time, he was lying on top of Su Wan's body and Su Wan was weakly crying for help. Seeing this scene, Su Yufeng's anger soared to the heavens. He completely lost his rationality. Almost at the moment when he stepped through the door, he used all the internal energy in his body and fiercely slapped Su Rui, who was lying on the bed. Although Su Yufeng was also injured last night, he recuperated for a whole night. Right now, his condition was very good. This palm was a palm that he did not hold back in his anger. The whistling wind from his palm carried a frantic and dangerous atmosphere. Oh no! At this moment, Su Wan also felt the danger. The range of Su Yufeng's attack was a bit too big. So at this moment, Su Wan's body was also shrouded under the wind from his palm. Although her life was not in danger, with her current small body, even if she was only affected by the wind from his palm, she would still need to recuperate for a long time before she could recover. At this critical moment, as if he felt a life and death crisis, the unconscious Su Rui suddenly opened his eyes. The sharpness in those eyes was unstoppable. The two people's line of sight intersected in an instant. Su Rui fiercely hugged Su Wan, who was under his body. With one side of his body, Su Wan's entire body was shrouded under his tall figure. He used his injured back to withstand Su Yufeng's palm. Pu. A stream of warm blood splashed onto Su Wan's face. She did not even blink her eyes. She looked at Su Rui, who was so close to her, in disbelief. Her lips moved. Su Wan wanted to say something, but her body was pulled up by Su Yufeng, who had already arrived at the bedside. "Xiao Wan, I've let you suffer. I'll beat this little bastard to death." Su Yufeng looked for a robe to cover Su Wan's messy clothes while his eyes were bloodshot as he looked at Su Rui, who was already on the verge of death. "Ah!" Su Rui spat out a mouthful of blood and still insolently looked at Su Yufeng. "I'm a little bastard." "What are you? An old bastard? Disgraceful. Unfilial son. I'll beat you to death." Su Yufeng, who was once again angered by Su Rui, shot forward like an arrow and was about to deal a ruthless blow again. Su Rui slowly and reluctantly propped up his body. He took out a tiger tally that he always carried with him from his bosom and looked at Su Yufeng with a face full of ridicule. "Su Daran, you murdering a colleague is tantamount to treason." Treason. These two words deeply provoked Su Yufeng, making him have no choice but to stop his actions. At this moment, Su Yufeng seemed to have suddenly recalled that Su Rui was not only his own son, but also the current dynasty's general. Moreover, he was an indispensable war god of the great Xia dynasty. Su Yufeng's fists clenched and loosened. Between the dynasty and his family, he hesitated. In the end, he still chose the dynasty that he served for his entire life. "Xiao Wan, Daddy will bring you away." Seeing Su Yufeng bring Su Wan away, Su Rui's insufferably arrogant face suddenly became incomparably pale. Pu. He fiercely spat out a large pool of blood. His entire person directly spread out on the bed. Before he closed his eyes again, Su Rui softly muttered a sentence. Chapter 15. After Su Wan returned to the General Fu, Physician Sai became a frequent visitor of the General Fu. After that night's banquet, the entire General Fu's attitude towards Physician Sai became even more cordial and amiable. Regarding Su Wan's sudden change of courtyard, Physician Sai did not feel anything unusual. He only felt a bit distressed for the haggard Su Wan on the bed. "Xiao Wan, did you sleep well last night?" The relationship between the two people slowly changed. Physician Sai's way of addressing Su Wan also changed from unfamiliar to intimate. "I slept well." Su Wan smiled at Physician Sai. "I'm really fine now, you don't need to accompany me. I know your body is fine, but your spirit." Speaking to hear, Physician Sai's expression became somewhat dignified. Did you catch the assassin that night? Su Rui was seriously injured and unconscious. Su Fu announced to the public that he was injured by an assassin and Su Wan didn't look too good these past few days. Su Yufeng only told Physician Sai that Su Wan was frightened by the assassin that day. This kind of excuse didn't arouse any suspicion from the outside world. Instead, who is the assassin became the hottest topic in the capital. Because Su Rui was immediately assassinated after the banquet, many people who attended the banquet were suspected. Xian Yuan Rui was one of them. And this time, Su Rui's serious injury also angered His Majesty. These past few days, the capital was heavily guarded. All kinds of interrogations and searches never stopped. Perhaps because the matter was too big, it caused the matter at the banquet to spread. Ordinary people then knew that Princess Su Wan already had someone in her heart and that person who moved her heart was Imperial Physician Sai. Sai family had always been a genius doctor family. Their reputation exploded among the people and they were also very popular in the court. The news of Su family and Sai family's marriage alliance gradually diluted the matter of the assassin and became a joyous event that everyone was paying attention to. Although Su Wan couldn't go out every day, the people outside would still pass in all kinds of news. Su Wan also learned from Yi Jin that Xian Yuan Rui and Yi Hua had already shed all pretense of cordiality. Recently, Yi Hua's life in the Wangfu was especially painful. Only Yi Hua was suffering. This was too unfair to Xian Yuan Rui's little friend. Seeing that it was almost New Year's Eve, Su Wan knew that this should be her first and last New Year's Eve in this world. Perhaps Shen Yuanqing's troops will arrive outside the capital in a few days. A storm is about to sweep through the entire capital. Sai Yu. Su Wan knew that this show was coming to an end. She looked at Physician Sai with some lingering fear. There has been no news of the assassins. Physician Sai, they are really scary. I am very scared. Don't be afraid, I will protect you. Physician Sai gently embraced Su Wan in his arms, his tone was especially firm. Yes. Su Wan nodded, then as if she thought of something, her eyes sparkled as she looked at Physician Sai. Physician Sai, you're so good at concocting medicines, can you teach me, let me have a way to defend myself? You want to learn? Physician Sai looked at Su Wan with some astonishment. Doctors could save people as well as kill people. Medicines can save lives, can also kill lives. Doctors basically kill people without seeing blood. Sai family once had several poison experts and according to Su Wan's knowledge, in this generation of Sai family, whether it was in developing poisons or using poisons, Sai Yu was the most talented. Can't I learn? Hearing Physician Sai's question, Su Wan somewhat dejectedly drooped her eyes. That's right, I'm not a person of Sai family. Also, I'm so stupid, I definitely won't be able to learn. Who said that? Physician Sai couldn't bear to see Su Wan's sad appearance, so he immediately patted his chest and promised that he would teach her well. With her talent, she would quickly learn. The two people chatted for a while. Physician Sai told Su Wan to rest more and he himself went to another courtyard to see Su Rui who was still unconscious. In fact, after resting for a few days, Su Rui's external injuries were a lot better. At least, it wasn't as badly mangled as it was at the beginning. But he was still unconscious. No matter what method Physician Sai used, Su Rui didn't have any perception of the outside world. He was like a person who fell into a dream and didn't want to wake up, as if he instinctively rejected everything in the outside world. The days passed by peacefully and in the blink of an eye, it was New Year's Eve. Every year on New Year's Eve, His Majesty would hold a banquet for the ministers. All the vassal kings and the royal family members who returned to the capital would also participate in this banquet. This was the Da Xia dynasty's annual banquet for the royal family, but for Su Wan, this was also a banquet of slaughter. On New Year's Eve, the entire imperial city was brightly lit. Su Wan sat in the General Fu's carriage and entered the imperial city from the east gate. Through the carriage's curtain, she looked at the magnificent and majestic palaces outside the carriage. Thinking that this place would soon become a pile of ruins, Su Wan regretfully thought that it would be good if she had a mobile phone. That way, She could save tonight's bloody battle in the Imperial City as a documentary. There were a lot of officials who came to participate in the banquet. Almost everyone brought their family members. This was the only time every year that they could show their faces in front of His Majesty and the many princes and princesses. Those sons and daughters of the officials were naturally in high spirits and attended in splendid attire. Su Wan was still wearing a red dress. This seemed to have become her signature color. Because they knew that she liked red, there was not a single person wearing red among the rows of womenfolk. From this, it could be seen how much the Su family was favored in the court. Every year, the process of the Imperial City's banquet was more or less the same. In addition to the Imperial Palace's singing and dancing, it was the sons and daughters of the civil and military officials who went on stage to perform. Finally, there were those princes and princesses who didn't reach adulthood who went on stage as the finale. Su Wan sat in a position closer to the front. She had been absent-mindedly leaning on the seat behind her. She didn't even touch the food on the table. When others saw her appearance, they only thought that she was uncomfortable. In fact, Su Wan was counting down in her heart. When the people in the palace were toasting each other, there was suddenly an earth-shaking battle cry outside the palace garden. That sound was getting closer and closer, accompanied by a group of burning flames. A large part of the palace garden was engulfed by the flames. Those timid palace servants screamed in fear and hid. With such a big movement, the people in the Imperial City's banquet venue finally realized that something was wrong. What happened? Someone come. His Majesty, who was sitting on the dragon throne, felt that something was wrong. He immediately loudly called for the guards at the entrance of the palace. Then a large number of Imperial guards rushed in. Seeing the person who took the lead, everyone in the palace couldn't help but widen their eyes. Father Emperor, long time no see. Enchanting was wearing a black armor. Step by step, he walked into the palace. On his grave and stern face, there was a trace of a rare smile. The moment Enchanting appeared, Rui's complexion changed wildly. Why was he still alive? As if feeling Rui's gaze, Enchanting slightly tilted his head and faintly smiled at him. Third Imperial brother, I trust you have been well since we last met. Tonight is such an important occasion, how come I don't see Third Imperial sister-in-law? Speaking of Yi Jihua, Enchanting's tone teased Rui. Speaking of Third Imperial sister-in-law, she is the noble person in my life. The so-called 8 characters of marriage and so on. Rui's hazy complexion immediately became even more unsightly when he heard Enchanting's words. You traitor, are you trying to murder the emperor? Third Imperial brother, you already said that I am a traitor. What do you think I want to do? Enchanting smiled. Finally, he turned his head and looked at His Majesty, who was sitting on the dragon throne. Father Emperor, you tell me, do I have the qualifications to sit on this throne? Such arrogance, such shameless boasting, it was simply courting death. In the main hall, there were already some military officers who began to secretly cultivate. As long as His Majesty gave the order, they would immediately rush over and take down this traitor. However, His Majesty, who was sitting on the dragon throne, remained silent. The situation in the main hall began to become incomparably strange. Physician Sai, who was sitting in the second row on the left, suddenly had a change of expression. Tonight's meal. Poison. Physician Sai asked himself and could be considered to have seen hundreds of poisons in the world. But tonight, he unexpectedly also fell for this trick. It could be seen how powerful this poison was. At this time, those military officers who were secretly cultivating suddenly spat out blood. Their complexion became ugly. Poison. Ah! Bursts of screams came from the crowd. Immediately, like dominoes being pushed down, the people in the main hall were poisoned one by one. This poison would not take people's lives. As long as you don't secretly cultivate, this poison would only make your stomach ache unbearably and your whole body weak. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.